Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this March 19th School Board Work Session meeting. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Townsend's going to be a little bit late this morning. What else? Mrs. Miller's going to be joining us by telephone. We're able to connect? Okay.
Hello.
Okay. Hello?
Yes.
We
Can
had,
you hear me?
yes. We can hear you. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And just want to say happy birthday to Ms. Cunningham. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy,
What a way to spend it.
happy
Thank
28th.
you. I was.
So we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we're going to get started in just a minute. Ms. Usher, have a quick question for you before you.
Tina, are you, is it rolling, is that working? Because we're not working. Okay, because I know it's spinning as well.
Yours is too?
We're not working.
We probably should take it off. That's what
Yeah,
I'm fine.
mine, I'm just,
Yours won't either?
yeah, I'm not even, Mr. Wilson even, he has it pulled up, but I'm just spinning.
Because we don't have the hard copy position now, right? Go by that, excuse me. That's
Of the
okay.
agenda?
Yeah.
I don't want mine to scribbled on. We can probably get some hard copies. You wanna do
Well, give us a minute, maybe we can get us.
it? Okay. I don't need to be online. I can write
Yeah,
from
you
here.
can go by that,
I
but we
can, I
can't.
know.
Mm-hmm. Good morning. Probably.
Ms. Cunningham, are we ready to go?
Let's see.
I don't think we can get started. I mean, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Having,
Hang on just a second. Let's see if it'll do it. Try logging in. None of ours have been able to do it.
I think we could,
Here you go. I'm up.
okay, so we're ready to go. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Your agenda
Appreciate you.
today, we're gonna kind of go in a different order because I know we have some guests and we're gonna have an executive session at the end. That's gonna come between two items, so we wanted to make sure we put that in a timely place. So today we're gonna start with item 4, which is the iris request system, the one we discussed about having that demo for you so you can see when you're putting in requests for staff, how we put that in. So Tina and Jason are here. I also want to say that Jason is still in the development mode of this, but we're at a good point that you can start seeing what he's actually put together and how that's going to look. But it will not go live until April because of all the other items that he has to get done prior to the COEs and everything right now to meet deadlines that we have. So Jason is going to go through this on the PowerPoint on the screen. Well, he's going to actually be in the live system. I'm sorry. That's all I said. I hope you're going to come up.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and Madam Superintendent. My name is Jason Carroll. I'm the Senior Manager of Web Applications here at the District Office. It's my pleasure to demonstrate the tentative iris system that we have right now, and as the Superintendent had noted, we're currently about 80% close to being finished. I still have a little bit of cleanup work to do on it, but it is quite far along, and I'm happy to show you some pieces of it. I'm going to go in and enter the system as a board member. So this would be the view that you would see yourself if you were to log into the system when it is ready. Like most of our systems that we have for our own internal use, we usually have a home screen landing page that has a brief notification panel, which takes up the majority of the home screen. It will give you a reminder of when you last logged into the system, what notifications may be waiting for you. In the context of this system, notifications might be something along the lines of a request that you previously created has been answered since your last login, or there are 3 responses to requests that you've previously created. This is, of course, contained within the system. However, there will be a rich notifications behind this via email, of course. This is just a reminder when you log in. It's a quick reference reminder of what you'll be seeing. We tried to design the system, as we do most of ours, to be very simple, very easy to work with. You'll see on the left-hand side of the screen that there is a series of buttons that you can press. That's our navigation system. You can always return to the home with the top button. You have a create new request, which I'll go to shortly. That is the main button you'll probably be interacting first with to create the initial request that you're making. There's a button called View My Request, which is a short way to view the request that you yourself have created in the system. View Others requests will, of course, give you a short listing of requests that were created by other members of the board, other than yourself. It's an easy way to keep them distinct on the system. And of course, Log Out and the About buttons all speak for themselves. They just give you some information on when we last built the system. So allow me to go to the Create New Request. And for the most part, the new request screen is very short and very simple. As like you were writing an email, we would ask that you provide a subject that's meaningful, that is brief. You have 250 characters, so you should be able to put something in there. Now this will be the easiest thing for a quick reference for those who are going to be researching or looking up the request. So for instance, I might say bus transportation stop request. It would be whatever you feel is necessary. If, as a board member, you are asking this request because of an incoming constituent who may have contacted you and is discussing something with you, you may check, this is not necessary, but you may check this box, which will give you a place for your own reference and notes for yourself, where you can provide the name of the constituent who you spoke with, along with their email. The main body down here is a free-form text box. You can copy and paste if you wish into this, or freehand type into it. This is where you type the body of your request. This will be ultimately what will be seen by the various people in the district who would respond to this request. So brevity is one concern, but also make sure you have enough information in there. There is a limit of 5,000 characters present on this, so there should be well sufficient amount of space for the request. In addition, we've also provided you the flexibility of being able to upload attachments. If there's some reason that you have an attachment, perhaps it might be a PDF Adobe document that you received from an outside person. It could be a document you've already previously prepared in Microsoft Word or Excel that's going on with your request. You could do that. You simply click the Add Attachment button, and then you choose a file, which there may not be. I'll just create a quick one real quick here. You can add more than one. There's a limit right now of up to 5 attachments, but that should be more than sufficient for most of our needs. And then you're ready to click the Add Request button. It'll take a brief moment, especially with an uploaded attachment, of course, because it has to send it to our system and retrieve it. And at that point, the request is now in the system. You can actually see that by going to the View My Request. Now, I've actually put in, for our test and demonstration today, I put in a number of previous requests so that you can see what the various pieces of the system look like. These would be requests that board member 1, my pretend board member in the system, has created. And you can see at a quick glance what the subject of each request was, what category it was internally assigned to for research purposes, what the current status of those requests are. And you can see the one we just created is listed as open, because we just created that one in the system. You will see that there is a request, the number 3, the second one on your screen, says time request board denied. In this scenario that I created, this was a request that would have taken 30 or 40 work hours to be able to research and complete. And in those instances, it was brought before the board, for instance, to see if there was approval to have the time spent for that research. In this example, it was denied. So that would close the request at that point. You can also see information unavailable. There may be some requests where, for extenuating circumstances, the information being requested is simply not available. That is an option that can be set in the system as well. And of course, completed with response. This would be an example of a request that was responded to and did have a response. When you view your requests, there's usually 2 tabs. The request is just a reminder of what was typed in by the person who made the request, which such as yourselves, the documents that were attached, and then resolution response. This, of course, is generic boilerplate text, but you would see the full response typed in by the person that district responded, along with any attachments that they're providing to you to substantiate the response or go with it. And of course, you can simply click on these to download them to your computer. This will work on tablet devices, of course. This will also work on cell phones. The only caveat to that is uploading of documents from iOS devices is generally not supported right now because they don't use the same kind of file system that other tablet systems will use, laptops and such. If I go to view other requests, you can see here these are the requests made by other members of the board. And you can see who the individual was. These would actually be, of course, the actual board members' names, along with the same status, open and closed, and so forth. It may be, we're still working on this, but as I mentioned, we did design this to even work on cell phone devices. If I were to do this, I can show you. For instance, this may be on an iPhone device. The format will change. It may not be the optimal device size to use it on, but everything is still as fully functional as it was when we started, including the ability to create a response. So even if you're on the go, this site will be accessible remotely, so you can log in from your phone, for instance, and still type everything just as you would. As these tickets are processed, you'll receive periodic email notifications, as I mentioned. When they're completed, you'll also be notified via email that a request was completed. And we'll have it designed in such a way that there should be a link inside that email that you can click that will take you to the site. Of course, you will have to log in, as you would. But once you've logged in, it will actually take you straight to this view you're seeing here, the request itself, if you click the link that's in the email that we provided. That makes it quicker for you to go straight to the ticket that you're asking about rather than having to go back in and find the one that was being referenced.
Questions? Yes, start Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Cunningham.
I had like 6 questions I was going through, and I think you answered almost all of them. But the one thing that I still had, is it possible for us to have a space to put constituents' phone number as well? Because
Yes.
a lot of times will have them call me, and writing down an email address on the go is
Absolutely. I can add
much
a
more
field here
difficult
adjacent
than
to it. Mhm.
just getting their number from my phone, so that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, okay, so if I get, which I get a lot of just emails with questions, or can you help, just simple, does it have to go through this, or can I still forward it directly? Does everything from now forward, when this is activated, I get April, will all of them have to go through then this system to be assigned to help me?
Right, this is, remember, this is the one we talked
Yes.
about, so we can keep everything and we can track and
Yes.
have everything. But all you have to do with that is do a cut and paste it right in there.
Got
You
it.
can cut and paste it, that way you don't
Yes.
have to retype it,
So-
and then send it right on
And
through
then
there.
send it right on
Mhm.
through.
And then you can view the process, and we can view it as well.
And that way it all goes through one central
Once- Yes,
request system, that's
Yes.
the question. And then secondly, I don't own any longer, or don't have anymore, a computer that's been assigned to me for the school district. I gave it back years ago to be used in a classroom. So all I have is my phone. So I just wanna make sure, as you said, you may be able to use it, maybe as we get closer.
So,
I'd like to go through it with you, cause I don't have,
yeah, it should be
it should be,
fairly easy to
okay.
put in the request. I think the
Perfect.
only limitation, if with an iPhone, is if you need to add an attachment.
the only thing I would need to do is cut and paste the original request.
Mhm.
Correct.
from another email to that and then
Yes.
go.
Correct.
And
And that would be fine.
And that would be fine. Okay, I just wanna make sure we test that.
We
Okay,
absolutely. do
awesome,
that.
thank you, appreciate it.
Ms. Fields?
Okay, so once you get a request, you will immediately respond and say that the request has been received and expectation within a certain amount of time, how are you guys gonna respond back?
So there's a facilitator role. Once you submit the request, there is gonna be somebody that's, Mrs. Bird is designated as a facilitator. That's essentially gonna be the middle person monitoring. So when the request comes in, they'll review the request and then forward it to the appropriate cabinet member. So it will go to us as a cabinet member, and then we will work, in some cases with our other staff to respond. We'll put that response together, submit it back. The facilitator then will go through an approval, and mark it completed, or it may need to go to the board. If it comes back and says 18 hours, then it'll be marked pending board approval, and then it'll go to the board. And so the facilitator will kind of be that middle person managing, getting the final responses, and doing the workflow piece behind the scenes in that role.
Okay, I just think it's important.
Absolutely.
And actually, as to your first point, when you first create a ticket, it will email you a receipt
Right.
letting you know what ticket number was assigned to your request, so you'll have that for tracking as well.
Yeah, I would imagine if the information is not available, you pretty much will readily know that. And you can readily, pretty much within the 24-hour window, say the information is not readily available. That was one of the answers that you gave,
Correct.
correct? Okay.
That should be a fairly quick response, pending the cabinet members not out and because it's gonna go to that cabinet member first, who will either respond directly or work with one of their staff members to find out whether that information is available. So that would be the only hangup would be it's going to the board member, and if the board members or cabinet member is not available immediately to respond, there may be a slight delay.
And the facilitator would maybe go back and say that, I mean, you don't want a 48 to 64-hour window of nobody responding, so that if the person is out, will the facilitator come back and say the person's out of office? and-
Right, it'll be next
Something
week.
Can we build that
Yeah.
in? Can we build that in there, Tina? Or Jason?
Yes, it should be.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
So in order to facilitate an orderly process with Ms. Miller, I'd ask her to send me an email if she had questions, and I just got one from her. So, Ms. Miller, you have a question?
I do. Is there a way, and it's hard to hear some people, will there be a way to mark a sense of urgency? Because if I have a question maybe about something presented today with the budget, I don't need that, relatively quickly, but as Ms. Fields just pointed out, there might be something asked that you need a faster response on. Is there a way to mark that in this request?
Tina, I think, didn't we
The
identify?
facilitator will do that.
Yes.
Right, we did identify,
The facilitator's gonna be a key factor in this system, because they're really gonna monitor the flow between the board member requests and getting the responses. And so they will look at that response and mark it, that there are different levels,
There's different
correct?
levels priority.
Right.
We have priority levels built in where the facilitator's gonna say, this is high priority, this is kind of medium, I don't remember the high medium.
Urgent, high,
Urgent,
routine, and
right.
low.
Do I
Yeah,
need to
urgent.
indicate in the request that, this person is calling, this is an urgent matter, can someone call me back within, or can someone provide a response within 48 hours? Do I need to indicate the urgency in the request?
yes.
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 Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Ms. Fortney?
So basically, the facilitator is like the gatekeeper?
Yes.
Okay, and, so if the gatekeeper, are we gonna know who that is, or?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
and so if they decide that it's denied, well, no, they will not decide, that's,
The gatekeeper will primarily
Push
move
it
it to
out.
the appropriate cabinet member for response.
I heard something about too much time.
So if it's, I think I don't know if it's policy or.
Right, yes, it comes to the
If
board.
if it requires, let's say, 20 hours of time to get this request completed, that will come to
It's
the
a
board, and the
policy.
board will approve or disapprove whether that request goes forward. So the board decides that.
Based on the
My
amount of
understanding.
research and data
Right,
required.
that's a
And what is the
policy.
cutoff on that? I mean, what is the policy on that policy?
What do you mean?
Like how much time it takes, like what is an acceptable amount of staff time
The
to
superintendent-
answer a question that might be from a constituent?
I think last time we even talked about, if we're seeing that it's gonna take over an hour per certain things, when we had that discussion last time, but if we see if it's gonna take
I don't remember.
like 5-10 hours, I think we had that discussion
We
in,
did.
was it in the master board training or in work session, I'm not sure.
I think it was in work
But we had that, if we're seeing it, it comes to the board, and then that's when the board can say move forward, or they can deny it, and that's when you see that come up there,
So
where it
that is
says time
somewhere,
denied.
that number is somewhere, the amount of time?
It's a up to the discretion of the
That's
superintendent.
correct.
Right.
True.
So let's say it takes too much time, then we still need an answer, and the board denies it, so we just don't get an answer? Is that how it's gonna work?
Pretty much.
Yes, yes, if the board denies it.
Hmm.
I would anticipate those would be questions for which the answer, while it might be a benefit to an individual, might not benefit the entire district, but may require a significant amount of time to do the research.
And my other question is, for the notes, if we don't want the constituent's name or email or phone number shown, we don't put it in, because
That's correct.
otherwise everybody can see it,
That,
Mhm.
and
which
that
tends to
only
be a
you will
problem
see that
sometimes in this
information.
district.
Right now, the current design is it's only you that would see
Right.
if that's filled in, no one else would see that.
It's really for your information, it's
So
not
nobody else would see that?
correct.
Correct.
Mr. Reynolds, then back to Mr. Wilson.
So on that note, if it's something that staff needs to reach out to this constituent, do we need to put that information then in the email, in the text box? Because they will not see the name or phone number at the top? Okay.
I can either do that, or one thing I could do is, we already have a check that says if it's for a constituent, there could be another check that appears to say, maintain confidentiality, or something along those
Okay.
lines, or constituent wishes to remain anonymous, or something, that would be your choice. If you check that box, then of course, you're the only one that will see that, but if you leave that box unchecked, for instance, then it would be visible to the person who ultimately responds.
Okay.
Yeah,
Would
that
you all
should
like
say
that
That is a
box?
great
That would be
idea.
Okay,
great.
Jason, if you can add that,
Good.
okay.
Good thoughts, yeah.
Mr. Wilson?
I can't see the form very well, but I'm assuming that both the requests and the responses are appropriately date stamped?
They are,
Yes.
they are.
Yes, it is. Ms. Fortney?
I'm sorry, I guess I'm getting old, but I don't remember having that conversation about the amount of hours and manpower it takes. I'd have to go back
It may
and
have been
look.
before you came on.
Okay,
Yes,
well, I
ma'am.
would hope so,
Yes, ma'am.
number one. But, you know, I feel like that's so, maybe if I knew the ramifications of that, it concerns me that, that it may take somebody who doesn't operate a computer very well an hour to get something that would have taken somebody who can operate a computer 10 minutes, and then it's denied because it was an hour. Does that make sense? You know, like, it's so ambiguous. Ambiguous. I just don't. Maybe I need the minutes from.
Yeah, we can
Would that
bring you
help
up
me?
to date.
Do you
Ms.
see where I'm
Fields?
going
Yeah.
with that?
I do, and I think maybe going back and looking at the policy,
Mhm.
I was trying to see if anybody could pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because there's history behind that.
there is.
Okay.
And we
Yeah,
don't really wanna get into no deep discussion on that today.
right.
But, we've had, requests that might have taken 40 to 50 hours, for one person to do. And that's just too much to even expect from a staff person. But the
Okay.
superintendent is the one that ultimately recommends to the board whether or not it's something that she feels like the staff have time to do, or if they don't. But for a couple of hours of work,
Yeah, we usually
that's
get
not
done.
even in the ballpark.
Mhm.
So that wouldn't even be an issue.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we usually
We're
get
talking
done.
about
We're
large,
talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
large
Pieces of
sums
time
of time.
with significant amount of dollars.
I still would
associated
like to,
with it.
like you said, see that policy and see what that is, because I could make the request as such that it
Board meeting?
fell within the policy.
I know
Should
it's in
be.
the of our.
And still get my
Let's see, I'll find it.
Yeah, I think it's in the manual, the
I
board
think it's in the
manual.
new
I'll
board.
find it.
It's in the manual.
It is in the new board.
Well, I read that front to back, but I really might need to go back and look at it. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Wilson?
Ms. Miller had another question? Ms. Miller?
Yes, in regarding what Ms. Fortney's commenting on, this system is not gonna be used to delay or not make available to the public concerns they may have with questions they're asking. I wasn't around for the policy when it was created either, and we need to have, I don't know what the wording is, but if they're gonna deny a request, is it gonna come with an explanation? Because like Ms. Courtney said, for somebody, to say, look, this will take 8 to 10 hours, when clearly it may not. So, is there gonna be an explanation when the request is denied, so when it comes before the board member can clearly explain what they're looking for?
We don't deny, the board denies, Ms. Miller. That comes to the board and it's the board's decision at that time, once we tell them how much time it would take.
So to answer your question,
The
yes.
facilitator determines it's gonna take a length of time.
No.
No.
When
No.
they respond, will there be a response with the denial
Right.
saying this will need to come before the board because it will
Who
take,
determines that?
in my
I determine the time, I'm
in
off the
my
staff.
experience, it would take
So-
10 hours to do, and that's against policy number whatever. Are they gonna express the hours they believe it will take to get the information requested?
The facilitator does not determine the amount of time. That is something, when I work with staff, I would determine, they would tell me how much time it's gonna take, and then we bring that amount of time to the board. The facilitator does not make that determination.
Okay, I guess we need to see how this plays out, because I'm with Ms. Courtney on who's determining how long requests will take, but obviously we were not around when that was an issue. So I look forward to it not being an issue, and seeing how this works with the new system.
Okay. Ms. Lawrence?
I think just to clarify, if it's a budget request, it would go to Mike and Jason, and they would be the ones telling you, this is gonna take me
The staff would
this
let me
many
know.
hours. It's
Mhm.
not you saying, I think that's
Right.
how much
The
time it would
staff will
take.
get with me. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
So the,
Okay.
I do have a question. The link, are we gonna be,
It's out there now on the, website still, right? It's just not live.
Yes.
I think it's still, it's just not live
so
yet.
once it's live, we get
We
the
can
link,
change the
so we
order.
can,
Yes.
Mr. Council, we changed
Yes.
the order of the
Absolutely.
agenda.
I like
This
the
is the first
background,
time.
sir.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Any other questions?
so you're the gatekeeper? No.
The facilitator is the gate to push it out.
Right. So, but it comes to you first or them first? Maybe
Goes to
that's,
facilitator,
goes to the facilitator.
and then the
they,
facilitator sends it to cabinet,
okay.
and then
And then-
cabinet goes from there to the staff that's gonna actually be getting the information for the response.
And then how do you determine how much time I'm hung up on the time
The
still? I'm
staff will
sorry.
come back to me and let me know
And
who's
make the
taking them to me.
recommendation.
Yes.
I'm trying to get the flow here, all right?
Mhm. Okay. Okay.
And it could be an issue of staff coming back saying, look, this is it'll take 8 hours, but I've got another critical project, can we push it back? And
And
those
that
are
would be
things-
communicated within
Mhm.
this, okay.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Okay, the next item coming before you will be the career and technical
Yes, ma'am.
education, multiple pathways.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
We're excited today to be able to bring to you, at a request, an overview of the Multiple Pathways Department. As y'all know, Mr. Cochran is the acting senior director for Multiple Pathways. And I think today you'll get a very extensive overview of all the different areas that department and area touches. As you know, CTE and multiple pathways is a very critical part of our school district. So many of our students are engaged in both CTE programs, academies, and post-secondary programs at our technical colleges that lead right to high-wage, high-demand jobs. I'm excited about the overview he's getting ready to give you. And without any further ado, Mr. Cochran.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, I'm just here to give a brief overview of CT programs and the multiple pathways, which is also part of the department. CTE education are courses that lead to high skill, high wage, or high demand jobs in our county. They consist of programs of study that are organized to lead a student to either an industry certification, a technical college, or a 4-year college. These are some of the types of programs that students can study. An example of a possible pathway for a student to follow in high school would include, under the health science education, student may start off with health science and anatomy and physiology, then follow it up with health science foundations, then take a course on EKG tech, hopefully become certified. Once they have that certification, they are now eligible to have a job in the county, or they can take that certification and build on it at Polk State by studying cardiovascular tech. Career academies. They're more enhanced programs of study. They're characterized by small learning communities, cohort scheduling, community advisory boards, and interdisciplinary cooperative planning. The overall goal of career academies is to increase achievement by engaging students and immersing the student in their career studies and providing them with a consistent and clear path towards a career. These are some of the differences between career academies and programs. All academies have programs of study, but not all programs of study are academies. Some of the reasons that some programs aren't academies can include limitations based on the size of the student population, teacher certification issues, and scheduling issues. CTSOs, also known as Career and Technical Student Organizations, are a vital component of a successful academy or program. They engage students in their area of interest with other students around the state and the nation. They often extend learning opportunities for students, and they give the ability for the student to practice their area of interest. Travis and Ridge Technical College provide CTE education full-time to high school and adult students. They offer day and evening courses, and they most of the programs offer a self-paced curriculum. Some district data for you. We have a total of 119 academies, 78 are at the high school, and we have 41 pre-academies. We have 23 certified academies, or accredited academies. These are accredited by an organization known as the National Career Academy Coalition. These programs have met the 10 standards that have been set out by that organization. All of the academies that we have that are modeled, the 12 of them, have exceeded most of those areas, and that's why they're designated as model academies. Here are some of the model academies in our district. These are certified academies. Currently, out of our 15 high schools, and this is an average based on all 15, 43% of the students, high school students in Polk County, are involved in academies. The rest of this data shows that we're doing very well on gender equity. However, in 2 of the sub areas, we still have some work to do, ESE and ELL. Students that are involved in academies consistently show better performance. We've monitored this data yearly, and as you can see, they have a higher GPA, and they earn more industry certification than their non-academy peers. We have a total of 172 programs throughout the school system. Some of those are just programs, some of those are in academies. Our CAPE funding, we are making improvements every year in our number of industry certifications given away. You can see this year we were close to 4,000 industry certifications. That equaled $1.6 million in CAPE funds that came to the district. 80% of that goes back into the classroom, back to the teacher. Just some information for you on the estimated value of industry certifications. Some industry certifications have more value than others, and that is based on the articulation agreement with the state and state colleges.
Question, what does CAPE stand
Yeah.
for?
CAPE stands for Career Academy, and I forget what the D&E stands for.
You had that on your list? Sorry,
I'm sorry.
it's hard to follow along when you don't know what it means, okay.
Industry certification for high school credit. Not only do these industry certifications have value to the student to get them a job, they also generate funds back to the school, but they can also be used as a high school credit, certain industry certifications. And the multiple pathways part of workforce and multiple pathways. We start off with our farm workers program. We have one of the best farm workers programs in the state, and I'm not just saying that as my opinion. That has been designated 3 years in a row by the state. Additionally, Nyla Soto was named the Project Coordinator of the Year for the 2nd year in a row. We have 2 adult schools that provide services to adult students. They provide basic education in math and English. Sometimes that can be used to give them the skills they need to pass a TABE test and get into one of our technical college. Other times students are there to study for their GED, and a large number of students are there to improve their English language skills. Hope Virtual School. Last year, Hope Virtual School students earned almost 5,000 course credits. That made a big impact on students' ability to graduate in this district. Our teen parent program, right now at 4 sites, we're currently serving 53 students, male and female, and they all partake and receive these additional services.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Johnson.
Do we also have other virtual options for students or just Florida Polk virtual?
By state mandate, there are 3 virtual options. They can have Florida virtual, they can have Polk virtual, and then there's an additional contracted provider.
Okay. Thank you.
Fresh Start program is a dropout recovery program that serves students who have been dropped out past their cohort, or students who have received a certificate of completion. Real Academy. This is a dropout prevention program that serves grades 4 through 10. Currently, there are 285 students involved in this program. This program gives hope to students who would have difficulty catching up in their regular school. The goal is to return these students, to accelerate their learning, and return these students back to their middle school or their high school prior to graduation. The Acceleration Academy is a dropout prevention program. It attracts students grade 9 through 12. Mostly students who have dropped out, others who have had severe attendance issues. Once a student is engaged in this program, they will stay in this program until they graduate. And
Just a
graduate
moment.
with the program.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Mr. Townsend?
that's, we run that in-house now? That's not a, I mean, we're using Edgenuity, but like it's our program, correct?
That is correct. That is run with Polk County School Board teachers, and it's under my supervision.
And it's kind of the high school equivalent of what real is, I would guess, like it's
Similar,
okay.
yes. We have our two opportunity programs, Bill Duncan and Don Woods Opportunity Centers, which provides educational opportunities to students who've had behavioral problems in their school. Our juvenile justice programs, of these three programs, we provide teachers for all three of these programs. Currently, we are serving 123 students, but over a school year, we will serve an estimated 600 students in those programs. Most of those 600 will be from the detention center. We have one contracted facility over which we oversee and offer oversight of their educational services. They have 200 students in this program. Last week, we were privileged to have our first Insight on-site. In past years, a number of Polk County School Board officials have visited the academies of Nashville, where we've learned strategies and brought them back here to Polk County. This year, in coordination with the National Career Academy Coalition, we hosted our first visit. We had 26 people from all across the nation who came here to learn in a structured environment from 3 of our academies. The visit was, I would say, an extreme success, being that the NCAC wanted us to host another one immediately, and is already in negotiation with us to hold a few more. So Polk County is now not only, we've known we have some excellent academies. The rest of the nation is beginning to recognize that we have excellent academies too. And these goals are part of the 5-year plan, of which I will have completed in next month. I will have a written version of those goals of our 5-year plan. These are the major goals of that 5-year plan. By the year 2024, we will double the number of NCAC academies in this district. We will continue to grow our industry certifications 5% annually. We will develop a county-wide internship program which will serve students throughout the district and give them opportunities to be in the job or job experience and learn those skills that employers are looking for. We will also increase our dual enrollment opportunities for students at our technical college programs. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Ms. Courtney?
I didn't know we could ask during the presentation, so I need to back up the difference between the academies and the programs. Under the career academies, Bartow High School has the fire and medical, of course.
That is correct.
And so how do we compete with the local fire department? Because one of our instructors comes from there, and
We are fortunate because that is that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that because we're not competing with the fire department. We are working with the fire department.
well, yeah, but he makes like $18 an hour when he comes to us, and that's not what he makes at the fire department. And he's involved in the CTSOs and takes his time and money and does all that. I just wanted to put that out there.
And I agree that is an issue, one that
I wish we
that
could solve.
Yeah, that I would like to also see if we can get some relief at the state level on that. But you're exactly right. Sometimes when we hire some of these people that we want to instruct our students in high skill and high wage jobs, we're not necessarily offering the highest wage. to bring them in.
I just wanted to put that out there. And then under types of programs, where it said agri-science and all that stuff, is this where our, teacher, the elite comes in, under the types of programs?
Yep, yeah, that would actually be a program and an academy. The elite program would come under the auspices of an academy.
So, that would be our teachers, maybe even paras, social workers, we could put that underneath, I mean, that big umbrella. We're having to grow our own, is my point.
Yeah, under that umbrella, we do have our early childhood education.
There we go. Okay, I just hesitated to say that. And, in general, the data from our, like our juvenile justice program, and how many of those kids, can we track if they actually graduate or they drop out, or do you have that data?
That's a good question. We provide service to the greater Central Florida area, so we get, even in the detention center, we'll get a number of students from Hardy and Highlands County.
Right.
So that would be difficult for us to track at the detention center. Additionally, the average stay for a student at the detention center is 3 days. So
Wow.
at the
Yeah.
longer term programs, most of those students come from out of county. So we provide services to students who come from Orange, Hillsborough.
Right. Then our real academy, isn't that where it's hard on our teachers, to actually get an effective, highly effective, score, with the VAMs and how they are used by, the state, I believe. Do we have a hard time staffing those, programs?
We're currently fully staffed at the real programs. And right now, I'm only aware of one issue, and I know that we're addressing it.
You read my mind. Very good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ms. Fields?
I have a couple of questions. I know that we're doing an amazing job with the career academies. We've been doing this for years. And we have to really contribute a lot of that to John Small. He's no longer here, but he did a lot of hard work along with the other staff. But I want to know, how do we compare in the number of academies on a nationwide basis?
We are second
Mhm.
to Nashville.
We're what now?
We are second to Nashville in accredited academies.
We're what?
Second.
Second.
Say it louder.
And we need to really push that.
And if we complete our 5-year plan, there's a possibility we could be number one.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, as it relates to certified academies, how do we fare there? The
That's what
certified-
that's what I'm talking about. Well, not just the number of academies, but also in the number of certified model
So,
academies.
overall? is what-
Overall?
Okay,
We are second.
okay, that's good. Now, what is the required grade point average for a child to get into our academies? Do we have a required grade point average?
Most academies do not have a required grade point average, being as you can enter the academy in the 9th grade. So, you can enter the academy. Now, some have grade point requirements for students to stay in the academy, and that usually is 2.0.
Okay, well, that's good, because I know at one point in time, there might have been something different. And trying to attract all kids to the academy was a goal, so that's great to know that. Well, I say great job.
Ms. Wilson?
Ms. Miller had a question. Ms. Miller?
I just had a couple. One, I joined that on-site at the Aerospace Academy, which was great. I had never been out there before, and I learned a lot about what you're doing, and I appreciate that. 2 questions. Is there a plan to catch those 2 subcategories that you said you're struggling with? And the other question is, I was asking about the follow-up on, how many pilots, how many engineers, and things that we have from the Aerospace Academy as well as other academies. And that information wasn't available at the time, but I was in a Lakeland City Commission meeting yesterday, and there was a man with a lot of excitement as he presented a great PowerPoint that showed how many engineers and how many pilots and all the other things that are happening at the Sun and Fun Aerospace Academy. And I'd like to get that information. I think the public needs to be aware of that, to know that these dollars are being spent and what the outcomes are. And I don't know where we have that, if it's housed on a website or if it's done per academy. I would like to make that public. But the first question was, how are we gonna connect those subcategories? Because I think he spoke of having to have a 2.75 to stay at that certain academy, which is fine if we have the supports in place for those students. And I was wondering if we had a plan to make that possible.
Now, see, I did want to point out that, there are some academies that have an articulation with the local college, much like, CFAA. The student will have to have a certain GPA to go into the college curriculum, which is also part of the course of study. So that would be a limitation on that academy. But many academies don't have that limitation. Now, back to your first question about, do we have a plan to look at our subgroups? Yes, that will be part of the 5-year plan, and we really need to dig down into each academy, because not all academies have that disparity. Only some of the academies have that subgroup not as represented as others. So I need to look at it on an academy by academy basis. Did I answer all your questions? I feel like I missed one.
Yes, and transportation, sometimes, yesterday at the city commission meeting, they talked about students could drive themselves to that certain academy. That's difficult. And when I was there, I thought about this is a great program for the kids that can access it. Is transportation an issue for all the academies or just the ones that are outlined like CFAA?
I'm not aware of the academy transportation being an issue, but if you know of any academy students that have been hampered by that or people who have applied, please let me know and I will address them.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Ms. Fortney?
First off, the slide presentation helped me because it was hard to follow in here. So it was very nicely put together, thank you. The adult schools, do we have data that shows our success there?
I don't have that on hand, but I can provide that for you.
Because that's something, success rate, I was looking for positives, that we can get out there. And then,
I do want to say this, I do know that we have grown our students being enrolled in the adult school this year by almost 300. So we are definitely reaching out and reaching more students.
there you go.
Now, as for the long-term results, I will have to get back with you on that.
And then the farm workers program, I'm real curious about that because that's also a positive that we have. Has our need, do you know off the top of your head, increased or decreased in the last couple of years? Because I've not really kept up with that as far as our migrant
I don't have the data
population.
prior to this year,
I'm just curious
but
because of our
I can look at the
socioeconomic.
trends on that.
I appreciate it. And on the industry certification for high school credit, the partial list, is that Dr. Akes that decides determines that as far as the industry certification, or is that CAPES?
No, that's already been determined by statute.
Okay, oh, it's by state statute,
Yeah, there was a crosswalk there.
okay,
Yeah, so that's why I said it's just a partial list.
okay,
Yeah,
Thank you.
and there is a statute on the table right now that would actually expand that. There's a statute
yeah,
on the
I think I
table.
remember that now, that's probably why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, so that's been in place for a little bit where you could actually count some of these industry certifications
Right.
for and we would look at them, look at what was done before, and then look at what state says and crosswalk it.
The student performance piece, that is really good data too, that's awesome.
Yes, ma'am, it further affirms that when students are in those
Mhm.
learning communities and surrounded by
Absolutely.
teachers that are keeping track of them, that great things happen.
And I want to apologize, that was an example, I did not mean to indicate that those were the only 2 courses
Right.
that could be a high school course.
Well, your model academies and stuff, and I know you probably have a plan, but I just wanna hear it out loud. And the certified academies to replicate those, like the Central Florida Air Academy. I mean, we've got Bartow Air Base, Winter Haven High School, Winter Haven Airport. Are those
So,
viable options?
Yeah, what I've asked Mr. Cochran to do with his staff is actually, he's been to each high school looking at that. Really, the key here is when you're looking at a situation like that, is what does the school currently offer? And then what is the high wage, high demand in that area? And the other thing that the trick for him is, and as a board we gotta be mindful of, is making sure that there's no geography gap there, that, just because you have one or two really good academies and maybe another one down the road does not, we gotta make sure that we have great academies and great programs at each high school. So we gotta be very strategic about that. And sometimes you'll have things that have curb appeal to them, and you'll think, well, I really wanna add this to that. But when we actually go back and look at the high wage, high demand list in the Central Florida job market and projections, there's not a demand in that. So you gotta be really careful that something doesn't have curb appeal, but it doesn't have a pathway on down the road.
Cause we can actually get punished for that, can't we, as far as money wise?
Well, it would have some certifications out there. They may not would be CAPE certifications, but
It would be a disservice to the
Yeah, there you
county,
go.
by not providing them students that are ready
I
for the
just
job
noticed
market.
that on your model academies and your certified academies, and as you look at them, George Jenkins High School has like 5, Frostproof has like 1.
I would like to say
So-
George Jenkins High School could be the model high school for the district. They have worked really hard and they have bought into the academy concept 100%. They do an exceptional job.
That's what I mean about modeling that,
yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm, gotcha.
Mr. Davis wants to say something, and I'll go to Mr. Townsend.
I just want to clarify something about the transportation question that was asked. The transportation for CFFA, or CFAA, was the Kathleen High School zone. We have extended that for students that get to George Jenkins and to Lakeland High School on space available, but that is specifically for the Kathleen High School zone. And that's with most of our academies, they're within the high school zone. The only exceptions are the programs, which are Harrison, Summerlin, and the IBs for east and west.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend?
I wanted to follow up on the certification. So does the state maintains, I guess, a big list of the certifications that it considers relevant? How often are those updated constantly? What's the refresh rate on that? Do you know?
Well, I would say yearly they're looked at. Now, whether it's changed or not, that depends. But often, things that are considered high skill, high wage certifications move and fluctuate depending on the need, and so that would also be based on whether there's a need for it or not.
Do we have our own take on what's relevant and what isn't? The state has a big menu to pull from. Are we validating those? And again, I think the idea is not to send somebody to something that's not going to be useful to them. So is there a local component to vetting what the state's doing?
Yes, sir, absolutely. When we looked at the new high school we were building, we looked at its location and what the job market is for our students that will be coming out of that high school. So, even though it's one county, you dang sure look at it. You don't just let the state list drive it. You literally are looking at trying to create an employee base that feeds the Polk County area and keeps those kids in our district.
And one of the things I've heard over the years is that the quality of the academies can be a little variable from academy to academy, and I think a lot of that depends on. I think a lot of them being specialized, they need a sort of kind of a driving force teacher, someone who's sort of a key person or two for them, especially the smallest ones, not so much like CFAA, which is a whole institution. Like for instance, it was my understanding that at some point in the last year at Tenor Rock, that the Power Academy lost a fairly important employee, someone who had been important to that program. How do we deal with the specialized nature of that? How do we have succession built for that? Because just calling a thing an academy, if it loses the person that makes it what it is, if we don't have something to replace that, just having the word isn't useful.
And that is a great point. So the idea of having, or the reason that we would like most of our programs to be academies, or to strengthen the academies that we have in place. We have some very strong academies, we do have some weaker academies, but the number one factor that can help in academy continuity is to have a very strong advisory board, which is one of the 10 national standards, one of the most important ones. So if we have the community support, we have the parent support, we have this advisory board that will help continue the program and find that replacement teacher, especially the industry, which is the sign of a strong academy. If the industry is part of that advisory board, then they will help that school find that replacement teacher, which we do have a very good relationship with Lakeland Electric, and we did lose the teacher at Tenor Rock. However, they were replaced. We do have a teacher out there right now, and they just went through their NCACA certification 2 weeks ago and were accredited again. So we were able to keep that continuity because we have a strong advisory board.
And a good relationship with Lakeland Electric.
So it's driven largely by the industry that's being served.
I would say it's an equal partnership. You're right about the teacher being a crucial element. It's school administration, the teacher, and the advisory board. All three of those things make up a strong academy.
Do we withdraw academies if the industry support or the whatever the gravity of it slips? I mean, what?
Well, if the gravity of the program slips and the students are not enrolling in that program, then we might look at either how we're gonna refresh that program or removing that program from the school and developing a program that could provide educational opportunities for students, one that would engage students.
And we have that built into our systemic reviews. How do we, I mean, is there like
That's the process we're going through now for each one of them.
Mr. Wilson?
Ms. Miller had another question. Ms. Miller?
Yes, the transportation, I would like to talk about another time, because that's a whole factor in transporting to those academies. But my question was, is there a minimum score on the FSA to get into the academies?
Not in any particular academy that I know of.
That's been an issue in the past, so that's why I'm asking. At one point, it was on our website,
I
that
think
you had to have a minimum.
I think what may have been residual left up there, and then I'm only speculating, when students didn't reach a score on a certain state test, and they had to take the double math and the double reading, we had that a few years ago, and that really limited their options for electives.
Well, yeah, that's the same in middle school now.
Are you,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Are you now building in those readings? We talked about that, and when you presented about the possible McLaughlin idea, in that presentation, they were going to build in the support to the academies for those students. Is that what you're planning to do across the district?
I would love to do that across the district, yes, ma'am.
Because I think those are the students we're missing. The students for some of these academies, and we're not talking about the engineers and the pilots, but some of our tech jobs, our trade jobs, we're missing those students because they're having difficulty because they're taking 2 readings or 2 math, and they can't access these academies.
Well, I agree. We need to continue to grow opportunities for students and not look for opportunities to exclude them.
Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
I just wanted to say thank you. These programs have evolved through many, many years of a lot of hard work for a lot of people. Having traveled to Nashville and seen firsthand the changes in the communities there, it's so far-reaching. Having attended our We Three expos and to see kids hands-on doing things that they love and that they're passionate about, because a teacher takes the time to nurture, love, and teach them their passion, there just are no words. I think it's one of the finest programs in this school district. I personally am very proud of all of our academies, all of our certification courses, and it, you know, I just encourage anyone who's listening, if you ever get a chance to go to a We Three Expo and talk to a child firsthand to see how some of these programs have absolutely changed their lives. And as we all know, when you touch one child, you're not just touching that student, you're touching the family. You're touching the parents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. In some cases, it gives families hope for the future. So I just want to say thank you. It's a lot of work when you see the number of programs from academies to farm worker. I mean, you just name it. We are in the business of changing lives, and I know while not everything is perfect in the way we would like it to be, we are certainly on the road, and as Ms. Field said, boasting second in the country only to Nashville, who started this, if you will. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful place to be, and I applaud both of you, and I can only imagine the hours and the time that it takes to make certain that everything as it is. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for changing kids' lives one child at a time.
I think when you look at it overall with the school district and what really education is about, when you look at the job market itself, only about 35 or 40% of the jobs that are going to be out there require that 4-year degree.
Correct.
And so it's really, really important for us to ensure that all students are engaged in a career pathway that leads to a high-wage, high-demand job. And I think that the department, Steve's got really a great overview and looking at the whole district as a whole, looking at where those gaps may be, and ensuring that, like you said, we need to make sure that all our kids have this opportunity. Because when a student walks out of a high school with an industry certification, they go from really being into a $15 an hour job to a 20 or 25, and that really is economic development. Go hire one of those kids out of that welding program down there. They go from making $15 an hour into 25 to 30 right out of school, even up to 40. Heating and air is the same way. That is what economic development and career development is for our county. So that department and really the schools as a whole and us as a board, we got to continue to remind ourselves it's not just about an FSA test. No. It's about career opportunities and ensuring that there isn't an opportunity gap there. And that's one of the things that the 5-year plan that Mr. Cochran and his department is working on. So we were excited about bringing it up here.
And I just want to say that our department supports what's going on in the schools, and that's really where the great things are happening. With our teachers, it starts with our teachers that get the kids interested in these careers, and then it goes to the administration that supports and makes sure that they have everything they need to provide that education. We've got a lot of great things going on. I recognize, we should recognize that. We recognize what our challenges are and what we need to work on, and that's what we're gonna do going forward, so.
Just to clarify though, because I think the question about eligibility is important, especially if we're gonna expand these into the middle schools, which I think we're talking about, right? We wanna do as many academies in the middle schools as we can. As I understand it, if you're not a 3 on the FSA, if you're a 2 even, you would not be eligible to enter an academy in middle school because it's essentially electives. I mean, is that correct? Is my understanding correct?
I think you'd have to look at each student by student and where they might be struggling with. And whenever we look at some of our schools, depending on the 7-period day or 8-period day, or whether a student is a level 1 in reading versus a level 2 in reading or a level 3, we've really tried to target the students with our intensive classes that are true level 1 or low level 2 students that need that intensive support. The difference would be that really, an FSA score should not rule out a student being involved or engaged in a CTE program, CTE academy. I'm not too fond of the word elective, but I know it's out there. Because I think that's what the kids need. They need to be involved with those hands-on programs that really get them engaged. And we try everywhere we can to not have those students' academic schedules completely filled with those core classes. And that's one of the things we've done at 9th grade now, is that same idea. We try not to double block the ELA or the math, to where that we try to create room in a student schedule where they can be engaged in these fun and hands-on programs. Now, is it a chance that a student has kind of dug themselves into a hole academically where they've got to retake some courses and stuff like that? Absolutely. But really, we need to look at it case by case. But I do think that we see your point with they need to be involved in these programs.
Well, I agree with that. I'm just trying to clarify what the rules are. It's so as a political leader,
Yeah.
so I can go out and talk to the public.
I am,
There is no rule from the state that says if you're not a 3.
I'm not aware of any rule.
Okay, so that relates to our scheduling. Most part.
Not so much the scheduling, but if there's a situation going on that we're unaware of, please don't hesitate to let us know and say, I think this may be occurring, or this is what I'm hearing. Keep in mind that we have 105,000 kids and 100 different sites, so sometimes, we try to make sure that we have our finger on the pulse of everything, but things can.
No, I hear you. But it has been widely explained to me by multiple people in the system, particularly at the 5th grade level, that they often tell kids, you won't be able to take electives if you don't get X, Y, and Z. And if that's not correct, then we probably need to address that. So I that would be a good. There's no reason to hash this out here.
Right.
I'm just telling you that there is certainly this perception that it's some sort of rule, and so we probably need to address that.
So where that would, now I see where you're coming from with it. A student that is a double level 1 coming out of a 5th grade class, they are going to have a schedule that would look like intensive math, regular math, intensive reading, ELA. That's 4 right off the bat. Then you take the rest of your core and you get a PE. So it is a tough situation when you have a double level 1 that has a history of being a struggling with reader or struggling with math.
But that wouldn't account. But
No,
that
so
wouldn't be a 2. That would be a 2.
No, I'm just saying that doesn't say he can't take it. I'm just saying that his other academic areas, he or she's kind of backed himself in a situation, and right now we don't have a remedy for that. I will tell you, on some of the schools, we put them on an 8-period day, those real struggling ones. But as the level of the student and that reading level comes up, we're able to go back to a 7-period day. But a lot of times in a struggling school, that's why we do that to begin with, to where that we can address the double reading or the double math and still have an elective period in there. But it also creates other problems on down the pipeline there. So.
Well, I'm just telling you that there's a perception out there
Yes,
that if you're not a 3, if you're not proficient, that you don't get into electives.
Well,
And so that's
Thank you for passing along.
if that's not true, it needs to be
not.
addressed. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I do want to add that at the high school level, all students can apply for academies, aside from Harrison, which has an additional requirement. But they apply for academies and there is no stipulation. The system does not, they don't have to put in their FSA score when they apply, so everyone can apply. Now, once they get there, they may have to meet certain criteria during the 4 years they're there. But right now, at the high school level, we accept all high school students.
Okay,
Great questions and great
Thank
points.
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
The next item we have is the Head Start Services Report. This report is, you normally have this report in the information items. I believe the chair wanted this
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, actually, I participated in the audit of the Head Start program, and obviously there are a lot of federal dollars there, and it was clear from that audit that it was important for the board to be more involved in the discussions about the Head Start program. So I've asked that periodically, we have Ms. Freak come forward and talk to us about the program, and then make sure that we're providing appropriate feedback.
Thank you, sir. First of all, we did go through, excuse me.
No.
We were happy to have 2 of the 3 portions of the Head Start federal audit completed in the months of January and February. Carrie will share with you about class, and I would like to share with you about the FA2 and then the goals that we have right now for our schools. Carrie?
We had the class audit January 14th through January 19th, and that's where they sent an observer training the class tool, which is what Head Start uses to monitor 3 areas in the classroom: emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. They visited 23 of our sites, going into more than half of the classrooms. They did a computer-generated sampling determining if they were at Sand Hill, if they went in Class A or Class B. We got a report back from that audit, and we scored in the emotional support area a 5.9. The scoring range is 1 to 2 is considered low, 3 to 5 is mid, 6 to 7 is high. So we were in the relatively high end for emotional support. Looking at classroom organization, that was 5.808. And instructional support was where we are the lowest, which is still a decent score at 2.88.24, and that is we are implementing a new curriculum this year, so it's a learning curve for our teachers to be instructional support with fidelity.
But we're in the mid-range, and we felt comfortable with those scores. I believe you received that in the,
Yeah,
did you?
backup.
Yes,
Mhm.
good,
It's here.
backup
Yeah.
copy.
Mhm.
The second part of that audit came in February, where we were blessed to have 5 reviewers in our office for 5 days. And it was an intense week. And on that Thursday, we happened to have a policy council meeting, and that's also when they were able to meet with 3 of the members from this board, and Mr. Wilson, Ms. Harris, I really want to thank you for your time, and Ms. Reynolds, I want to thank you for your flexibility. After these 2 knocked it out of the park, they said they didn't need to talk to Ms. Sarah Beth Reynolds, so that was it.
Well, I appreciate you calling me and letting me know that before I got there.
Yeah, we had to do a little search and find for you, but that was great. And I did want to thank you too for really speaking to them and hearing what they had to say. I think Ms. Reynolds, I think Ms. Harris will
Fields?
attest to
Fields.
this. Pardon, Ms. Fields, I said it twice, right? So that's great.
Ms. Oliver, I know you're talking about me.
I think Ms. Harris will attest to this, I did it again! I am going to just
You're
shut up.
good, you're
I think
good.
Ms. Kay would tell you that our policy council was just phenomenal. I cannot tell you, I mean, I was moved to tears. The leader was sharing with great emotional intensity about how Head Start helped her. And when I looked at the 2 monitors, they were crying. So I thought, maybe we'll pass this on. Our review has not been sent back to us. As of this morning, I looked in the file. We had a level, a federal complaint about the program, and we had to, with the help of Jason Pitts, respond to the federal complaint, and it was cleared, and everything has been closed, thank God. So all of that was done as well. You will also find in your backup information that there were 5 particular school readiness goals for our current Head Start students. In the fall, in the winter, and the spring, we have checkpoints to determine where our students are in terms of growth. And you'll notice our winter checkpoint shows all 5 goals, 7 indicators, growing at an expected rate, and we hope at the end of the year that this will show forth added growth. So you'll note in managing their own feelings, from those social emotional goals to understanding and counting and solving problems, all those goals did move forward in growth. So I'm anticipated anticipating a fine close of the school year. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, just want to make it clear, during the course of the audit, the auditors seemed to indicate that they wanted a better, closer relationship with the board, where the director of the program was coming before the board, sharing with us what was happening, and that we had opportunities to ask questions directly. So I've asked the superintendent to have Ms. Reed come at least quarterly and do that for us, so to ensure that we're in compliance with those federal audits and we get a nice, clean audit.
Ms. Fields?
I came behind Mr. Wilson, when they wanted to interview the board, and there were a couple of questions that I think we were able to answer, and that was basically whether or not you guys attend the meetings every month, and you do. And wanting to know if the board approved the budget and was familiar with the expenses that's incurred, and you guys provide that as well. And so I think at the end of our conversation, they felt comfortable that we were very much in compliance, and they were very complimentary of Maddie and her team. And the policy council is just amazing. And as I said to the auditors and you as well, we need to find a way to get a video done with those parents talking about the value of Head Start, because they can tell the story better than anybody else can tell the story. And they have some wonderful stories to tell, and they're very, very intelligent and very smart. And I don't think that we give them enough accolades on what they do. So I just say great job, and work on that video, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for all you do. Awesome job.
Do we have time for a break? Can we take a break?
Yes, we can take, 5 minutes?
Yeah,
While they
short break.
transition.
Just a short break.
And I'll let you know that after we do the health plan update, we're gonna go into an executive session before the budget. Okay? So we're gonna take a 5-minute break while we transition.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready to continue, we're gonna continue, Mr. Perone.
Good afternoon. Every year at this time, we get an annual financial report. And as usual, we have Allison Poole from Wakely and Jan Bush from Robinson Bush. I'm going to let them start, and then I will conclude at the end with our next steps and going forward. We've been watching this, obviously, for a couple of years and updating you, and the news hasn't been that good. It still is not that good, but we're going to go through it, and then we'll make a recommendation.
Hi, I'm Allison Poole. I'm the actuary with the plan. I'm with Wakely Consulting Group, and I've been working with the plan for several years. So I'm just going to give you the overview of kind of why I'm here, why I'm important to your plan. So the Florida Statute 1208 allows the district to self-fund its benefits. So under that statute, there's certain requirements that the plan has to meet. It has to meet certain it has to be actuarial soundness requirements, which means it's meeting able to cover your liabilities as of a certain date. So if at a certain point in time, if the plan closed down, you'd be able to pay all the outstanding claims. That's what that amount is. In addition, we're certifying that your rate structure is covering all expected expenses. In addition, we're looking at the surplus of the plan, making sure that going forward, if you have a rainy day fund, the Office of Insurance Regulation considers about 60 days of claims as a reasonable rainy day fund. And that's in addition to the outstanding liability that you are required to have. The plan is required to file within 90 days of the end of the plan year. Your plan year runs calendar year, so we file. The goal is to file by the end of March. I will tell you that the statute has no penalty for filing late. But the goal is to file by the end of March. What the Office of Insurance will do, once we file the documents in any support, they will send a letter of acceptance of the plan being in compliance with Statute 1208 or not being in compliance with Statute 1208. And if it's not in compliance, there's certain additional actions that need to be taken.
Good afternoon, I'm Jan Bush of Robinson Bush. Pleasure to be here. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of a background about what's been happening and what has happened in the previous plan year where things are projected to go going forward, and I wish I was giving you good news right now, but this is a trend graph that kind of summarizes in a graphic depiction of what really the problem is here. The blue line is your claims expense, so you can see that steadily climbing. The red line is your revenue, so that's all the funding that goes into the plan, both what the board puts in and what the employees put in for the dependents that they are covering under the plan. And we back out of that administrative expenses because they do not trend at the same level that your claims expense trends. So you're actually trending below the national average of about 7.2. Your trend is at 6.0, at 6%. So the plan really is operating very well, but you can see the real problem, that big delta, that big gap between the blue line and the red line is continuing to get bigger. Now you will see in the middle of 2018, the red line has a little jump up, and that is a transfer that the board made in the fiscal year, the previous fiscal year, of $5.8 million. So some of the things that are driving some of that expense. This next graph is showing your paid claims over $150,000 on any individual on the plan. So we go back to 2013, and so we had in 2013 26 claimants, individuals on the plan that had paid claims in excess of $150,000. You fast forward to 2018, that number is now 67 people with claims in excess of $150,000 to the tune of a little under $16 million. We haven't had the big claims that we've had in the previous couple of plan years. If you go back to 2017, you can see that we had 56 claims, so 11 fewer claims at $16.7 million. But we had a $2.3 million claim and a $1.7 million claim. We don't see those big claims in the 2018 plan year, but we had 11 more of them. So it's a little bit of about $1 million less in spend, but I think, you know, healthcare dollars just don't go as far as they used to. Then we look at by number type. So your subscriber would be your active employee or your retiree that worked at the district. So we looked at about 9.9 million of that spend, or 2/3 being your actual employees that are having those large claims, spouses at about 22%, and your children at 15%. So that's how your 67 claims break out in terms of the relationship type. We also looked at the funding, so how much monthly funding goes in for this relationship type. So an active employee as of July 1 of 2018 is being funded at $614 per month. The claims expense for that employee tier is $532. So you can see that there's actually money that is being added to the plan based on the employees. This is just your medical claims expense and not administration. Spouses, you can see the rate as of January 1 of 2019, so they just had an increase this year, went to $594, and the claims expense per month is a little under $1,000. So the spouses are subsidized by about $400 a month. And you can see the children tier is also being subsidized based on the funding structure. And your retirees that are not Medicare eligible are about $1,000. That's the most expensive group that you have. We also are putting in a $40, the district's also putting in a $40 a month funding for the employee health clinic. And when we look at what the costs for the health clinic, in 2018, it's $36. So there's actually a little bit of a surplus on the clinic.
Is that for both?
For both clinics. This slide just shows, again, that you're actually a pretty lean plan. This is showing your expense distribution. So if you look at 2018, your claims and your clinic expenses, which is really what provides direct patient care to your health plan members, employees, and family members, is about 95%. So 95 cents out of every dollar is going to pay for health care versus administrative expenses and other expenses to run the plan. So that's actually quite good, and that has been the case for the last 2 years. This slide shows what your group insurance fund balance history is going back to 2012. And again, this is another, I think, telling slide where you look at what plan year, what the board contribution on a monthly basis. So if you go to 2012, it was $504. If you follow that column all the way down, it stayed at $594 as of the 2013 plan year and was not increased until July 1st of 2018. So while we saw that blue line on your trend graph going up, we didn't see the revenue going up commensurate with those expenses going up. So you can see that in the 2015 plan year, where you show in red the $810,000 loss, that was the year when you started spending more money in the plan than what you were taking in to cover the expenses in the plan. You can see what happens year after year. That just compounds itself with those claims expenses going up and no new revenue coming in. So in 2018, we ended the year with a roughly $12.3 million loss, and we have used up all of the reserves in the group insurance fund balance, so we have no days in reserve. Now, we also had I mentioned a few minutes ago, a $5.8 million transfer in June of 2018 to help offset some of those losses. And the revenue was increased July 1st, and that's reflected there as well. This slide is really duplicative of the previous slide. It's just looking at the operating statement for the plan, what I had just mentioned. As part of Allison's filing, the Office of Insurance Regulation does require that an exhibit be filed that shows the current plan that we're in. So we're in the 2019 plan year now, and then projections 2 years going out, so 2020 and 2021. So based on the plan design changes that were made in January of 2019, as well as the funding change, we're projecting, with no changes at all, a loss of $13 million this year if there's no other change to the 2019 plan year, and that'll take that fund balance down to a negative $23 million. With no changes to 2020 and 2021, you can see that hole just is deeper and deeper, and doing nothing really is not an option.
So, on slide 12, this is where we need to commit to a 5-year plan, and looking at the top column there is the board rate and how it increases or will have to increase, and again, these are projections, but we have to increase the premium the board pays on behalf of the employee from $732 in 19 to $802 to $878 to $962 to $1,053. And if you look, you'll see that not until 2023 do we have a positive balance. Normally when we file, it's 3 years, as Jan said, and we're gonna move ahead and work on the 5-year and ask them to accept this. We're not guaranteed that they will, but we are gonna ask that they take a look at what we've done, and Allison's gonna ask for or offer a few other things like a quarterly or semi-annual reporting of the plan and any other things that we can give them that show that we are making a commitment to getting this back on track. This is not going to be easy, I will tell you. That's a lot of money. That's $9 million in the first year alone that we are going to put in directly into the plan. Now, that does not mean it has to be board, 100% board. We can work with our unions and see if there's a way to, like we did last year. But, you know, I can't control that. So in order to submit something for acceptance, this we can control in terms of the board has control over putting the funding in. Obviously, if we get the funding, it's going to be difficult this year. We're going to, excuse me, take a break and then go into the budget, and we'll show you how difficult that's going to be. But this is the plan.
And it's something, I'll be honest with you, as our CFO, I mean, we've been talking about doing this for years. Look at the number of years that it stayed stagnant. We kept saying we've got to go up, even if you go up incrementally every year. So, yeah, we have to move forward and we have to do that. And my question is, because we don't have any days in reserves, which is what they ask for, how does that affect us on the financial marketplace? Because I know they expect, I mean, I know you're gonna submit the 5-year, I get it, to be able to show that we're finally gonna be at 6.5 million in reserves. How many days is that, and is that what they're, I mean, how did you come up with that value? Help me.
So when we came up with that, we were looking at what the board rate, looking at about, it's 12% in July 19, and then it's 9.5% going forward, and trying to get to a point where you were positive with some amount in
Yes.
5 years.
Yes.
So we were not looking for a particular number of days in reserve.
Okay.
The Office of Insurance Regulation, if you have less than 60 days,
Yes.
then what they want to see is, do you have monies somewhere else? And they'll ask for a letter that Mike would sign that says, we've got money in unencumbered funds in this particular fund, that if the health fund needs it,
We can use it.
you can use it. In the big picture, the board, you're paying your bills, and that goes a
Right.
long way to all this, and this is, showing the commitment is a big part of this. And we've discussed some other options on how to look at the surplus and for the current filing, that I'm gonna put to
together.
and discuss with the OR before we, anonymously, before we do anything.
I understand. And so how many days would that give us? What is 6.5 million? Help me. Can't remember.
Yeah.
20,
They're close to 30 maybe.
Maybe, okay,
Yeah, 20.
okay. So, but I mean, could they theoretically ask us, go out another year? Like, when will you be at 60 days? Is that,
They could. I would be surprised if they did, but they could.
okay, okay.
I've had several discussions with them about the 60-day surplus, and especially for schools,
Yes.
large school districts, it's, you're holding a school hostage essentially.
Sure.
And so I'm on board with that argument with the OR, that if you've got monies elsewhere, then let's use that as just say, we've got these if we need them. And make sure that you're geared toward being positive.
And then the next question to Mr. Perone is, before we write the letter, do we have it? Will we have it?
have,
The reserves and unencumbered funds?
oh
that
yeah, we'll
can
have
be
in our
used?
fund balance, they usually ask your fund balance, and that amount would
Would be in
exceed
there. I
yeah.
got it. Okay. Thank you, Madam Super.
Ms. Fields?
But I guess my question to you, Ms. Varone, is that impacts the ability to do raises and all the wonderful things that we want to do for our employees. And if the union is not willing to work on some type of added contribution actually a contribution from the employees, then where are we? We are in a very precarious situation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. And what we have here is the plan changes that we did last year, so we went with the same concept that you're talking about. We did budget for benefits, salary and benefits, and then we worked and kind of mixed or split the program with the unions and with salary. And we'll have to do the same thing this year.
Mr. Hamilton?
Can you go back to the historical time period, please? I just think it's really, 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 really important to say this for the record for everybody who's listening. This is not on our employees. This is not on our unions. This is a failure at the management level. 2015 of January, I wasn't even paying attention, as I was just a dude out with a kid in school. And it started going in the red then, and nobody did it in it. Anything. That's not the union's fault. It's not our employees' fault. Of course, they're going to suffer as part of the deal in trying to fix it. But we're not going to use this against them and say, hey, we got ourselves into a terrible, terrible strait. We didn't impose impasse on them for a year. I'm sorry, we did impose impasse on them. They didn't. One of the reasons I fought that impasse as hard as I did is this, that we didn't do anything about. That's on the previous board. That's on management. This is a really irresponsible thing, and it's gonna suck. It's gonna hurt. Everything is on the table to do with it, but everybody needs to know that there were people not taking care of business here. And I will not have it used as leverage or blame against our employees. So I just want to say that for the record. And in terms of, we're going to have to do, at least we're indexing it now. And I think obviously this is all compensation. You know, healthcare is compensation, raises are compensation. It's going to be a sliding scale again. And we'll have to work constructively as best we can. But let me say, as a board member who actually fought from the day he walked in here to start doing something about this and to not be at impasse, I still want to apologize to our employees for letting us get into this state. And I want that on the record too. I apologize for the people who came before me who didn't do anything about this.
Ms. Cunningham, then Ms. Fields.
Well, and here's all I have to say is, it's not a us versus them. We're in this together. I'm sorry. Okay? There were things that were done at the time with the information that we had. There were discussions at the time with our unions and so on and so forth. So please, without having been sat in these shoes and watched what took place, I'm not saying it was appropriate looking back now. Monday night quarterbacking, we all do it. But please don't make it an us versus them. Our employees are part of who we are. We're trying to make good decisions here to move forward. And I think by going back and laying blame, and in my opinion, being mean, it's just not the place to be at the table today. I'm sorry. I take offense to that. I'm tired of it being discussed that way. Why can't we work together and say, yeah, there was a problem in the past. I opened my remarks with the fact that, yeah, we did not do anything for those 5 years. Okay? Not laying blame, saying, okay, that's where we were. Now we're here today. Let's look forward and try to make the best decision that we can for our community, our family of employees. I think a positive approach is the best way to look at this. It does no good to go back and make comments and accusations when one wasn't sitting at the table during those times. Going forward, certainly. But I just feel like we're trying to do the best job we can given the facts that we have today. That's how I feel.
Ms. Fields, you recognize.
Health insurance is a negotiated item.
Yeah.
And no matter how we want to look at it, it is that. Now, to say we have not done anything to circumvent the deficit is very much in error. The creation of the clinics, the wellness programs, all the things that we tried to do, we can't control people getting sick and having large claims. We just can't control that. And then trying to make sure that you have the resources to not only take care of the insurance expenses, but also trying to make sure that we give staff some type of decent wages. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on the table that needs to be discussed, not today. Maybe we need a historical training meeting so everybody can understand where we started. We flipped the plan numerous times. We even had once two or three different types of plans.
Yeah.
Pick and choose which one you
Cafeteria
want.
benefit.
Trying to make sure through the insurance committee that we were listening. So there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be discussed here.
Okay. Mr. Caron, you recognize?
While not increasing has caused an issue, if you look on the far right, the days in reserve, it's at 62, 63, 61, 46. 46 is still extremely healthy.
Yes.
We went from 46 to 7 in 1 year. That was a major, and now we're trying to catch up. This was not, you have to make a decision because we have very limited funds, so we are dealing with other things such as salary. So I just want to point that out, that drop off in that year was a bad year.
Mr. Wilson?
From my perspective, I think we did take it seriously, and we looked at a lot of data. And I think from my perspective, what I anticipated was what was going to happen in the future. We simply didn't know that, and we talked about how we make those decisions relative to providing raises for our teachers. And I held out hope, perhaps foolishly, that we would get help from the state. And I am stunned, frankly, even today, that we haven't seen more help from the state in terms of FTE funding to help with these issues. So, I don't buy into the argument that management was not fully engaged in this, and that management was somehow derelict in their responsibilities. It was making decisions about things that we couldn't possibly anticipate. And again, I think even today, from my perspective, the solution here has to be additional FTE from the state. And so until we're able to get that message across, it's going to be a continuing challenge for us.
Mr. Towns, I'm
Just-
sorry, Ms.
just-
Courtney. Let me go to Ms. Courtney,
Yes,
please.
Yeah, I'm not into the blame game, and insurance is insurance, you know, it is what it is. But I will say that I was at the board meetings during that time, and I do believe I remember our unions trying to warn the board while they were standing there speaking on at least 2 occasions that I was there for 2 different years. What concerns me is that the district is gonna pony up $40, the board, this time from 18 to 19. Is that enough? That's one of my first questions in the long run. And then I look and I went through and did all the math down here, and it looks like our employees are ponying up quite a bit. Just, it's like comparing apples to oranges to me. I don't know if anybody's on Facebook besides me, but that was the biggest problem last year, was the insurance and how they might have got a little bit of a raise, but it was eaten up with their insurance, and people that don't even use it were having to pay more. And I know that's what insurance plans on, but it seems to me maybe we could find a solution. Of the healthy folks that don't ever use it, why are they having to float the folks that, and I know that's insurance again, but the point I'm trying to make is we might need to be a bit more creative than everybody just has to give more money. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because that was a sore spot. And it's not, and I'm looking, the generic goes from $8 to $20, and that's, that's a lot of money.
For 90 days.
I know, but still, I'm paying $8 now for Plavix for 90 days. That's $16 more. Whatever. That's all I was gonna try to say there.
Mr. Townsend, then back to Mr.
Quite
Wilson.
unfair.
Yeah, and look, I'm not gonna belabor this beyond this. I wanted to say this once. We had an impasse that was imposed when we were offering 0 for raises and no solution to healthcare, and we fought it out for a year, or however long we fought it out. Everybody in the building except me was on board for that impasse, and history does matter. Employees need to know that, and I think the lesson we learned from that is that we need to be collaborating with our employees all the time. We had no interest in collaborating with our employees when I walked in the door here. I was here. I remember those meetings, and there are consequences to it, and we're living with the consequences now. I want us to learn and get better, and think through how we're going to make this not happen again. I appreciate the pretty severe indexing. I think that's appropriate to the problem. We can negotiate it. We'll have to see. I mean, again, everything's going to be on the table, but I think the last year and a half has been much better in how we've collaborated, and we need to be right now getting down on our knees, being helpful with our employees and our unions, and coming up with very constructive, friendly, fact-based ways forward. So that's that's my point. I'm not gonna hammer y'all with this over and over again, but I feel like I needed to say it once.
Mr. Wilson, you're recommending.
So the bucket of money that comes from, whether we index, whether the district pays for it, whether we give it in salaries, comes from the same bucket. So
Right.
as you adjust the indexing, it has to come from somewhere else. That is the greatest challenge. So I think what happens is that there are a lot of folks who don't understand that. As I look at what's happening in Congress today, it's clear to me there are folks who have no concept of economics and how they work. It's pretty stunning. But, you know, we
That's an understatement.
we have, so I think somehow that's what we have to be able to convey to employees, that if we index it, if the district pays for it, then that may be a challenge for us in offering salaries. It's not that we don't want to, but that's why I go back to what I said a few minutes ago. Somehow we have to get the message to our state legislators that if they want quality education, they have to fund it.
Ms. Reynolds?
Oh, I'm sorry.
She's got some great news.
So the Senate released their education appropriations original numbers this morning, which includes 2.2 billion for public schools, which is 1.1 billion over the current year. That's $350 per student increase, which is a 4.71 increase in total funds. $149 increase to the base student allocation, $600 million increase in flexible funds. In addition, the $233.9 million in bonuses for teachers, which we had expected, and then $46 million to supplemental services for turnaround schools, and $53.7 million to maintain the funding compression. And I can send that all to you. I don't know.
How much was that on the funding? Wendy just sent me something on the 149. I haven't
The
seen the rest of the budget, but
It was $53.7 million to maintain funding compression.
okay, well, that's interesting. So,
Just so you know.
the House is out in a kind of a word. They haven't done the run yet, so we don't know what their base student is. Wendy's looking for it.
Mr. Townsend?
There is one other potential pot, and I think we need to start thinking about this. You know, I know we just went through a sales tax, but a lot of our competitor benchmark schools, our benchmark districts, Manatee, Pinellas, Orange, already have that extra mill for half mill, however much it is for operations. You know, we're at a competitive disadvantage with them on funding right now with that. You know, look, if they're not gonna fund us, and they're not, or maybe they are, who knows? There is one more potential pot of money to go get if the public wants it. There's a lot of risk to it, because it's every 4 years, but, you know, it's a thing to think about. You know, that could go right to compensation. So.
Concur. We have to do something.
Maybe, to that effect, maybe we could get a brief presentation on that at some point in the next few meetings, where you lay out how that actually plays out and what the pros and cons are to it, just preliminarily. Does anybody have an objection to that?
No.
Mike, you know what I'm talking about?
Any opportunity for new revenue, we need to be looking at. That's why I
Yeah.
was talking about the marketing stuff. I just think so much could be generated, not entirely, but piece by piece. I just think we're missing great opportunities, so here we go.
Are you asking about pros and cons if we go after a
Yes.
tax?
Yes.
Yeah,
What it would take.
yeah. But I don't. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to. I think it's like it's a referendum for a half mil. Is that what it is?
So
And you can use it for operations.
Yeah, I think you have to fall under a certain amount of millage that you can
Yep.
do. I think it's I forget what district it is, and they did it for compensation, and they're in their third round of 5 years that it's passed.
Right, I mean, Manatee just, a lot of our benchmark districts have it, so I think we at least should have that laid out to us, what the option is, and then we can discuss it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to move to an executive session, and we'll remain in the room, but we need the room to be cleared with only Ms. Perone, Mr. Pitts. Is Forties in here too?
She should be. HR should.
Forties, HR in the room. Okay, we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, Mr. Perone, budget.
So, Jason did an update on the governor's budget on the revenue side, I guess at the last meeting. And after we spoke, and what we didn't think we were giving you, and we weren't sure you fully understood, is what that means to our budget going into next year. So what he's done now is kind of a summary of if we do a level service budget and just carry that forward with the new budget that the governor had, and hoping that, it's early, but hoping that the Senate and the House would come in with a little more favorable. But in case they didn't, we didn't want to come to you in May and say, oh, by the way, we have a potential, X $1 million deficit that we have to deal with. So he has done a nice job of kind of summarizing it and giving you kind of two different looks at the budget. One kind of bare bones where it's just a level service, and then a budget where we've added some things that we've heard throughout the last 3 or 4 months of board members wanting some certain things to look at in the budget. So I'll let him take over and go through that. Please.
I think we may need to reconnect with Ms. Miller.
Oh.
Could you help with that? Do you have her number?
I can try. I think she has an appointment.
Yeah, I thought she said you'd update her later.
She said she was with her son. She was walking with her.
I asked her if she wanted us to reconnect, and she said yes.
She's probably waiting. I've learned that that's what you do up there. You hurry up and then you wait.
And, Mr. Bridges, you indicated you would call and share the conversation.
I'll be happy to.
Hello?
Okay, we're back. Are you there?
Okay, yeah, okay, I'm putting you on mute, hold on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Perone.
Okay, good afternoon, board members. I want to start off with an apology. I can feel sometimes that during these couple months there's a frustration that I don't put attachments up on the agenda. And it's only because information changes so quickly this time of year for budget. In fact, as we were talking today, the Senate and the House have released more information about their budgets. So it's such a moving target. I do apologize, but we have to have those out about 12 days ahead of time. So that's why you normally get a handout instead of it being on your electronic system there. But as of yesterday, I only have the governor's budget. And I wanted to just briefly go over again, when new revenue is talked about from the state, it doesn't necessarily translate into dollars that we can just pay for all of our needs with. So I'm just going to briefly walk through the first page you have in front of you. The governor's budget shows that we're going to get $17.9 million in new revenue, which sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. However, in that new revenue dollars is the funding of Best and Brightest, which was not in our budget the last 3 years. It was more of it ran more like a grant. This year, the governor is suggesting that moved into our budget. So 14.8 of that 17.9 is Best and Brightest. So if we take that out, since we can't use any of that for new revenue, it leaves us with $3.1 million in new net FEFP revenue. And in the FEFP, we talk about categorical funding and discretionary funding. Categoricals, again, is those restricted line items like transportation, safe schools, Structural materials. And we're, no, I think I'm good.
You know,
I'm sorry.
This stuff just chokes you up.
It does. Well, everyone's look on their faces when we talk about budgets like this, so I try. Anyway, we talk about categorical funding. Thank you, Joanne. Categorical funding, which is restricted, so we can't just put it towards healthcare, let's say. So there was a $1 million increase in categorical funding. Basically, 2 line items made up that $1 million. That's safe schools and the mental health allocation both increased by about $500,000. So that leaves us with 2.1 in discretionary funding. However, if you look at the number of students, the new students we're going to get, the state is projecting 500 new students. 500 new students at the base student allocation represents 1.8 million. So that's just revenue that's only because of the growth in students. So new additional revenue just to spend on discretionary items is $250,000. So that's how it can be deceiving when you see that $18 million, 17.9 in new revenue. There's only about 250 that we could just basically spend on how we want. To make it even a little more disheartening, you divide that by the 104,000 students, and that's only $2.40 a student in new discretionary revenue based on the governor's budget. We have heard about the Senate and the House budgets are either similar or worse. So we'll bring that information probably at the first workshop after spring break with those new numbers from the Senate and the House. Is there any questions? I went through that pretty fast.
Yeah, just, so what you're saying is the new FEFP is almost all growth based. Like that's not any kind of increase in the base funding. It's just all growth based.
Between the best and brightest and growth, it's, yeah.
Okay. So other districts will be worse than that, and some because they won't have any growth base. So again, I know it depends on all, but
correct.
Yeah.
They correct.
We're fortunate in that we're growing a bit where some others are not.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Polk has been very fortunate in our growth.
Ms. Fields?
Can you give us the amount for the safe schools again?
Yes, I'm gonna on the next page.
Okay.
Are there any more questions about this page before I move to the next? Okay. The next page, I also presented at the last meeting, and you can't really read it on this screen. So this is pretty much what I call the line item budget that we get from the state. The first column is our current budget. The second column is the governor's proposed budget. And the last column is the difference between the two. So you can see that the governor's budget is increasing the base student allocation by $50. After you apply the DCD, that leaves us with $48.54 per increase in this base student allocation. After this yellow line, the funding compression, the first yellow line, that funding compression, that was at $7.7 million that we received last year that we think is only going to be one time. In the governor's budget, it's not included, and there's some indication it may be included in either the Senate or the House.
I'm gonna check with
Senate.
I'm gonna check with
Senate.
Wendy right now.
The line items under that first yellow are pretty much the restricted categoricals that we're talking about. So safe schools is right after that funding compression. You can see that they increased, the governor's budget increased it by $646,000. Mental health allocation went up by $375,000. So there's $1 million right there in those two line items that went up. All the rest of them stayed flat or just slightly increased. The one difference is this digital classrooms allocation, which was a fairly new line item that was introduced maybe 4 or 5 years ago. For whatever reason, the governor's budget does not have that in there. That's part of Dr. Barrios' budget that they use for technology in classrooms. But these numbers tie back to that first page. You can see at the very bottom, that $17.9 million here. But this is the line item that we kind of wait for the Senate and the House, so we can really compare between categories. Is there?
Mr. Wilson?
Ms. Reynolds, did you indicate on the Senate budget that they had approved the
Compression?
funding compression of
They,
7.7?
yes, hold on just a second.
I just texted Wendy too, so we'll see.
53.7 million to maintain funding compression allocation. So,
She's reminding me, she told me that was gonna happen, yes.
Does that mean we get the 7 million or no?
Yes.
yes, that
Okay,
would mean
Senate,
we
she
get
told
the
me a while
compression.
ago that the Senate was in favor, but I think it's the House that's gonna say no, so then we'll
Okay.
fight that one out.
Okay, so,
And to do something that thinks,
thank you.
Sure. Are there any other questions about this spreadsheet here? Okay, we'll move on to our two budget slides. Let me- Okay, so you've got two small, I say small, there's very few line items, budget, they're not scenarios necessarily, but they're two ways of kind of approaching how we go forward from here. Page 3, which I've shown up on the screen, is what Mike referred to as really a zero, I called it no new level of service budget. This means moving forward with really the exact same services we have today, the same expenses, and then looking at what our revenue is gonna look like with the addition of the new expenses that we know about. Okay, so I'm gonna walk you through this fairly quickly, but please stop me if you have questions. So the first dollar amount you see up there is $45.7 million. That we're projecting right now a 4.05 fund balance. That 45 million is a projection of what really that fund balance. That's a combination of restricted and unrestricted. So it's a little more than the 4%. That 4% that we talk about is only the unrestricted. That 4% is about $30 million. So between restricted and unrestricted, we should have somewhere between 45 and 50 million dollars of ending fund balance to start next year off with. This year's, the current budget has $861 million of revenue. So on the right column, I've added 17.9 million in new revenue based on the governor's budget. I then removed the 14.8 million of best and brightest because that, again, doesn't represent pure revenue to us. So there's the $3.1 million of new net revenue that we're gonna get. That is a combination of discretionary and categorical. So the first highlighted line, $910 million, would be our estimated revenue budget. That includes current year's ending fund balance. So that's how we would get to the 910. Current year fund balance when we end the year, and then the new revenue. In the middle are new items that we are pretty much, I don't want to say they're all non-negotiable, but these are items that we really need to consider increasing in our current budget. $1.2 million of various operating increases. These are $50,000 here for a server. These are a bunch of items that represent that 1.2 million. Units that we added during the school year, these were typically teachers, paras, maybe some mental health staff. I'm not exactly sure, but it's 13.1 units we added during the year as we needed those staff. That represents $830,000 that really needs to get budgeted this next year. Continuing our turnaround school incentives, Ed directed, that's about $1 million. There's a request for Avid and some grade recovery programs of $500,000 that title funds will not be able to pick up this year. We have pretty much exhausted our fuel reserve, so we need to increase our fuel costs by about $1.5 million. We will see a small FRS rate increase this year. This year, the Senate and the House both have their own plans of FRS, so I'm not really sure how that's going to play out. This was based on what we were told last year. We'd see about a $1.9 million increase in FRS retirement. The recurring cost of the 18-19 year raises, those were not budgeted, so that cost will continue into next year. We won't need to account for that in new budget. And then the $9 million that we talked about before the break in new revenue that needs to go into the health insurance plan. That list is $23.8 million of new items to our budget. In addition to that, Dr. Steinke had let us know that we are not able to meet we're not able to meet the needs of our students with the number of speech language pathologists that we have, especially in the Northeast. And she's recommending 6 new speech language pathologists with a total of $414,000 there. So those, what I kind of call bare bone or no new level of service, that's kind of to continue as we are today next year. We're going to see $24.3 million in new expenses. Now, the meat of the slide here. So for us, the name of the game and finance is ending fund balance. So this first scenario takes that new revenue and these basic new items, and you can see that our projected ending fund balance is a negative $2.6 million based on just this information I just provided. That's budgeted, where we would budget 100% of salaries. As we know, there's normally about 15 to 20, but to be conservative, about $15 million of lapse every year. So at the end of the year, next year, the projection would be from a year from June, we would end with a $12.3 million actual ending fund balance, which is 1.5%. State, 3% is that marker that once we dip below 3%, we have to start reporting to the state. We go below 2%, then the state really takes over. And our board policy is 5. So without really any new additions, we're sitting at a 1.56 fund balance a year from now.
So it's the deficit to get it back to 3.
Yes, I do have the deficit to get back to 3. So on this first scenario, slide number 3, we would need an additional $11.4 million to get us to a 3% ending fund balance. Which makes sense because the 12 million represents 1.5, so to get to 3, you almost double that. To get to 5%, we would have to cut $27 million to get to 5% fund balance.
And the 4%, which is the board has had for the last 2 years, is 18, 19. The 4%, which is what we're going to end this year and what we ended last year, the board was comfortable with. That's 18 or 19. So we did 3, 4, and 5.
You said 12 million is 1.5?
Yeah, that's the number right there. So if you double that, we're going to end we're projecting with that budget there, we would end next year, June of 20, with 12.3 million in fund balance. So we're saying we can go with this budget and then cut 12 million somewhere else so that you'd end up with 25, which would be a 3% to keep you away from the state.
To skate by, we really need an extra 15 million.
Correct.
Well,
With,
I wouldn't wanna be at 12, I wouldn't wanna be at 3%. That's too
No,
close.
that's why I said 4, which the board has been comfortable with, is
Yeah.
19.
Well, I'm thinking that 15 would be somewhere around 3.5, which would still be pretty desperate.
We're just, it's early on. Again, we may, if the Senate holds, we might have just picked up 7 million because of the compression. So, and that changed since 10 o'clock this morning. That's why his point earlier, I print stuff right before I give it to you, because it's ever changing and right up until the first week in May when the session ends.
question.
I just want you to have an idea of what might be the situation when we get there.
So if you can shine your crystal ball, and tell me, you're projecting for this June to be, you said roughly 4.05% fund balance.
yes, ma'am.
So if we do the health plan things that we've talked about, right, that's in here and all that, you'll have 1% to not touch it, to keep it at 3 starting the new year. You have 1%, which is what?
1.5 is 12.
12, so 1% is 8, 7?
Yeah, well, I always use about 8 million as your 1% of fund balance.
Okay.
So 40 million would be your 5, and yeah.
So, I mean, desperate is desperate, but if you take the 1% at the end of June, you have that to add to this. Am I correct, or is no?
It's already included.
Oh dear.
I know.
It's already built into the.
Okay, I didn't know that.
You were looking too happy there.
I was like, ooh, maybe.
The very top line
Show me.
is predicting where we're gonna end in June. See the $45 million dollars at the very top?
Right.
Yeah, that's where we're gonna end in fund balance.
Got
and
it.
Carried over to use next year. So I added that into next year's revenue. So when you see the $910 million in the first yellow highlighted line?
Yes, that's that plus that.
Includes,
I didn't get that. Sorry. Darn, thought I found 1%. It's all math, sorry.
Thank you for trying.
Yeah.
I know she sent it to you guys while you were talking, so you haven't gotten to see it yet, but Jackie just sent us the sentence, and it does have that best and brightest is a separate line item from the BSA. So that 149 BSA looks at least to be a true 149. That's not, best and brightest is not on that line item.
Well,
Which I know this is the sentence very early,
Yeah.
pretty, looks the most friendly it's gonna look, but just so you
Mr. Townsend?
So what is the BSA? Well, we can talk after, I don't
know.
Alright,
149.
in the past, there was a capital transfer that we did, is that already built into this?
That, yes, that's a very good question, I'm glad you brought that up. That does include the $8.4 million transfer that we're allowed to do for maintenance costs that go towards our capital. I think we were able to do, 1 year since I've been here, it's only been 1 year we did not do a transfer.
So it's, but you're already, that's
It's
already
already
built
in
into this, you're already.
You had that on an earlier version, I probably made them change something.
And that,
Got out.
and that amount, that's the maximum we can do?
We have not looked into, that's what we've historically done. We probably, you've always said we could probably do a little more.
We can do more.
But then you're hurting your,
Well, but I mean, we got the half-cent sales tax, so
We can, there is a maximum of what those maintenance salaries are, and we figured it out 10 years ago at 8.4. It's more than that, so there is some ability to use more capital funds. I'll calculate what I think that is, so at the next work session, let you know what that would look like if that's something that the board might want to entertain.
And I've asked this before, and I'm sure it's, but to the extent we scour what that sales tax is allowed to do, like what the interpretations of it are, there may be, if there are any overlapping things that we could consider capital that are also, that we have to, there may be nothing, but it'd be worth taking a close look at what that really allows us to do, I think.
Ms. Fields?
When you bring that, you need to show the impact that that's gonna have, please.
I look back at Ms. Usher when we talk about
Yeah.
this. I want to see the reaction.
Watching her face, yes.
Are there any other questions on this slide? So the next, your last slide, or page of your handout, is nearly, it's the same information at the top. The only difference is this slide here contains some of the new levels of service that we've heard talked about, that we kind of know about, that maybe board members or other management have expressed. So the slide is the same. You can see the $910 million of revenue over here projected for next year. You can see the same $23.8 million that we just saw on the previous slide. So, and the position changes for the 6 new speech language pathologists. Now, one of the board members had brought up some mental health, adding some mental health, social workers, psychologists. That's all been costed out. And those are the next 4 line items there when you see the new school counselors, mental health counselors, social workers. It totals nearly $20 million for those additional staff if we were going to do that. Yes.
Mr. Townsend?
Well, okay, I just have one quick clarifying thing. That would be in addition to what we did this year. So where it says school counseling plan, that's enhancement of what we already did, right? Right, it's not
Those
like,
are additional ones?
That's the number of positions that would be required in each of those areas as a school counselor mental health to make sure every school has one of each of those positions.
right, but we created a package last year, that's still funded, right? We don't, like, this would be in addition to it,
That's
right?
actually taking the positions we created this year, putting them into the schools, and then what would still be needed after doing that, so yes.
Okay.
I was gonna say, it is additional. Ms. Fortney?
I just want to thank you for at least showing that, because that's a step in the right direction.
It is.
And I met with y'all on that, and I'm just pleased. I'll write you a check afterwards.
You're gonna need to.
We can set up
I didn't say you
we
could
can
cash
set up
it.
a
It's the
payroll
same thing with
deduction.
that.
Convenient.
Hopefully that's not printed.
So besides
Another
those,
state does this? Oh, no.
besides those new positions, I also put in $10 million just as a placeholder. That's similar to what it cost us this previous year, or the current year, for our raises. So that brings us to $55 million. Again, this is not a suggestion from us, we're just putting some costs up here for discussion's sake. This is not a recommendation from the budget staff. But with those new expenses, $55 million, we would be looking at a loss of, we would end next year budget at $33 million. After lapse, a year from now, we'd be at an $18.5 million loss.
So you would need 43 in cuts or something like that to get to 4%.
So you brought in there.
Maybe 37.
It's
I'm
42, we'd have to cut $42 million if we did all that. We need $42 million to get to 3% fund balance.
And just to be clear, no exchange of money will be forthcoming.
That was
For
a
the
joke,
press.
right, sir?
It was a very nice gesture, though.
I have a big heart,
See that?
small pocketbook.
Well, are there any questions on how we've shown this, or the next time that you see us after spring break, we'll have all three budgets, the governor's, the House, and the Senate, so we can talk about the differences and start going forward, talk about how we're gonna meet the balanced budget that we need. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. The remainder items you have are the informational items. I don't know if you have any questions. I would like Dr. Ake still, because item 8 under informational, there was a new statute come up because of ESA, and I wanted him to kind of explain that, why we have that in there, so that we make that publicly known.
Because of what now?
Because of the new ESA and ESOL. He's going to explain that one.
Right, we need to, I know it's that time of year when we would traditionally update our student progression plan anyway, but we're still about another month away from getting you the 1920. But with the new ESA being signed into law for Florida, what that will mean will be that schools will have to test every ESOL student. Before they had a grace period when they did not have that, and that's the main change in that. And if you actually printed out the student progression plan, which is the 1920, all of this will need to be updated on the front. It still has last year's board members where it was passed. So I thought it was just really important that you realize that because this is a school board approved document, a school board policy, I just thought it was really important that we go ahead and bring that one change to you, to where that you would realize as a school board member, because the schools are going to have to do that piece this year. That was the only piece that's changed as of today. I will be bringing you an updated SPP within the next month, but this is a substantial change of business for schools.
Mr. Wilson?
Dr. Rakes, when we talked about this a little bit earlier, there was some concern in the community about some of our schools conducting practice tests in preparation for the state standards, and then using those tests as part of the grading. And I was just wondering if you could very briefly share your thoughts about what our policy is on that, or our practices on that.
Right. You know, and I think our position has always been that we really don't want to shut down school to do practice tests. I don't know that there's a large effect size on doing that. And I think that, you know, I had a little bit of communication back and forth with one of the community members about that. Now, I will say that, you know, it's kind of hard to say, well, what is really a practice test? So I think that, you know, I would want to be really clear when I looked into it. I want to be able to ask the school or go to the school and talk to the principal about kind of what was going on, because different people would interpret different things as being a practice test. So let me give you an example. A teacher teaches a unit of instruction. It's aligned with the standards, and at the end of that unit of instruction, he or she gives an assessment that is aligned to the FSA standards and actually shapes the questions to be in the same question format of the state assessment. One could then, you know, generalize that, well, is that teacher actually doing practice tests? I'd have to say, no, the teacher's just teaching that's aligned to the state standards and it's the same format. Then, you know, I think that if you looked at a body of instruction for a given class, and the teacher had looked at the assessment for that particular body, let's say that month of instruction, that particular unit, and then actually pulled the questions from different banks that aligned with that, to where that it's modeled after an FSA assessment. Again, one would then say, well, that looks to me like an FSA assessment. It looks to me like the teacher's, you know, just doing practice tests or teaching to the test. I'd have to say, no, that's really the teacher's aligning her instruction and her assessment with the state assessment. So I would be hesitant to say, you know, you can't do any practice test. I would think that, again, a lot of times, when we hear concerns, I think the best thing we can do is to make sure that I'll be glad to look into it, and I'll also or have a regional look into it. But it's hard to just say that, every one of these assessments, and it depends on the context of it and how the teacher was actually preparing. But I'm not a proponent of shutting down school and doing practice tests. I'm not a proponent of shutting down school and doing workbooks of practice tests and all that. That is not rigorous. It's not aligned. There's very little return on that. So, looking at it on a case-by-case basis, you could kind of take the other position on this. If we looked at an 11th grade student that had failed an FSA a couple of times, or a 12th grade student, the question would be, would you want that teacher who's working with that student who has to pass that test to graduate, what do you think the best methodology for approach with that? Well, it's a close line curriculum based on what that assessment specifically is and what that assessment looks like. So that's kind of, I think that being very cognizant of what the best instructional approach was. I wouldn't be wanting to shut down school to do that, but if it is going on or there's a concern with it. And I think the other thing that Mr. Wilson, you and I talked about is whether that should go in the grade book. And that would be a concern for me too. If it was truly we're just running off a practice test, we're giving it, what are we doing with it? Does it go in the grade book? I would have a concern with that. So if any of that's happening, please let me know. But I would want to look and see the prevalency of it before we took a stand and put that into the SVP. That would be my take on it.
Well, thank you for your willingness to address those concerns as you get them, or someone from your staff to address them. And I think that's the best approach for the public, is to just reach out to you and then to look at those on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, sir. Anything I can do. The state statute's pretty clear on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Also, we have to keep a running timeline, actually minutes of the number of assessments we give. That includes the STAR assessment or any kind of formative we give. So I would want to be very mindful of that, and that's why that statute actually come into being, was to ensure that we weren't just testing and testing and testing to be testing. So I appreciate you bringing that and the community members my concerns.
Mr. Towns?
Thank you.
Well, if the statute is pretty clear, maybe it makes sense just to administer, put something around administering practice tests consistent with this, and I don't have the recall of the statute right here, but if there is a prohibition on using practice tests in the grade book, maybe we just reiterate that.
Well, we could.
And that's, I think that might be an easy way to do it.
Well, we could do that, but keep in mind the very first scenario that I ran through, where the teacher had actually aligned his or her assessment directly to that. Maybe he or she actually clipped the questions out of a practice one, but it's directly aligned to it. Is that student and that teacher doing practice tests? Well, no, I don't think it applies to theirs. So you got to be very careful about that piece. And I got to tell you, at the end of the day, with the SPP, we have some guidelines on grading and grading practices. Elementary's got pretty extensive guidelines on it. Secondary's working on it to bring forward with that. At the end of the day, the grading is the responsibility of the teacher. So before we put anything in there that says you should not put this in the grade book, we have to be very, very cautious of what the statute is very clear that at the end of the day, the responsibility of grading and owning the grade book is actually the teachers. So we got to be, that's a double-edged sword there on that whenever you put the policy in there. Again, it goes back to, well, are you doing what do we mean by practice test? The writing test, if you're given an essay and you do. See, Mr. Wilson, I told you we could be a long time.
I would also probably agree.
Maybe just remind people of this. I mean, if you don't put it in the SPP, send a blanket email or something saying, hey, heads up, guys.
But I would want to talk to a teacher that we felt that there was a concern with.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to address it, just on a case-by-case basis.
Sometimes it gets turned a little bit. Yes,
Well, I would too, but teachers are not willing to come and talk to folks that they work for and feel comfortable. Just saying.
Yeah.
But I will say that a lot of times, when it's graded is the only way you can get the student to actually try and do the work. So that may be the rumor that you're hearing, but they might say it's for a grade. It might just be pass that you did it or fail that you didn't, to get them to actually participate in the education process.
Ms. Fortney, you being a middle school teacher would understand that.
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So, if they don't have a little bit vested into it.
Encouragement.
Right.
Yeah, but I do think that, being very, very mindful that even if it was that scenario, I would want the student to to have the opportunity to do corrections and it be in a formative manner.
Right.
And the statute does say that for your level ones and level twos, when it's not in that core area, then that kind of remediation would be very appropriate. But again, I'm not a proponent of shutting down school and doing
Oh,
a bunch of practice tests, because the effect size is just very low. We know that by research.
Mrs. Fields, you were fine.
I just think this would be a teachable moment. That might be something that you could incorporate it so that everybody is on the same page and understanding that it's not supposed to be a graded item.
Right. It should be a formative item, but I would want to see what the context of it is.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, that concludes it for me, and I believe.
Thank you, Dr. Eggs.
Oh, thank you.
Chair, turn the meeting over to you.
Yes. So, first thing on the board workshop agenda is review of the tonight's school board agenda, so we'll go to that. We have some special recognitions, Madam Superintendent, and I think Mr. Towns is going down front for those. We have a number of minutes, 4 sets of minutes. Any questions, comments, corrections, amendments to the minutes? Okay with the minutes?
Ms.
Yes.
Miller still with us?
Ms. Miller?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Hello,
We're-
can you hear me?
Yes. We're working our way through the school board agenda this evening. Any questions, comments
Okay, yeah,
on the minutes?
No, I didn't have any questions on the agenda, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have new administrators.
There's one.
There's some business services items, C14 and C15. Any questions? Business service contracts, C16 through C23. Questions? We, of course, have a number of donations, both cash and non-cash, and as always, we're very grateful to our business partners for stepping up to the plate and helping our school district. Items C24 through C42. Questions, comments? Those are the donations.
Wait, never mind, I think I'm in the wrong place. I was looking at number 22.
C22, Stanball Middle.
Yeah,
Do you have a question about that?
I did, just a real brief. They said that it was gonna be a pavilion with lights. And, would that mean that, we could also get fans out there because it's gonna be really hot under that pavilion if it will already have electricity? Like the ceiling type fans, just curious, because lights are great in the daytime, but fans would be even better when it's like 80, 90 degrees outside.
Okay, we'll
Just-
add this go.
Thank you,
Okay.
And that will come back before us, I guess, at another time.
sorry.
No, that's
Right.
okay.
Yes.
Let's see, where do we stop? C42, so we, facilities and operations, C43 through C44. Questions, comments? And I know items C45 through C47, those are the human resource recommendations.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask that we pull these out, put them on the regular agenda moving ahead. No particular problem with them. I just think there's a lot of good information on them. I think it's important that we approve them, that we're looking at them. And I also, I asked for the underlying spreadsheet for these. I think what we're given is probably a PDF of what's an active spreadsheet, I think, I would guess. I would like to be able to kind of sort some stuff and analyze the data myself. So if possible, in the future, to and I can get with whomever on this, just to be able to have the actual spreadsheet, so rather than the PDF. Yeah. Is it? Do you have like one big master spreadsheet, or do you redo it each time? Okay.
May I also add that these they could change just like other items right up to the last minute.
Okay. Well then it's fine. Like after we approve them, then, I mean, like, I don't have to have the active spreadsheet prior to voting for them. It's more of a lagging, be able to just play with the data when it's done. So like, once we approve them, if you could just send out the underlying spreadsheet, that would be great.
Okay. And Mr. Townsend, you mentioned moving forward. Would you like those pulled for this evening's meeting as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think so.
What would be the purpose of doing that?
Because there's a lot of good information on them. I think putting them out on the main agenda makes them more available for the public as a whole. I do get periodic concerns about transfers and how things are organized, and I think it's just a way of prioritizing them. I think there's a lot of important stuff that's going on those three, and it's just a way of prioritizing them. There's not any particular thing I'm after. I just think there's a lot of good data there, and I would like for it to be more prominent. And I think it reminds folks that we do have a role in ratifying the personnel decisions. We're asked to vote on them. If we're not going to be asked to vote on, that's one thing. But I would like to have those out.
So when you look at this and you're not a board member, maybe that's the question, do you not see these come up just as they are?
I think that when a thing is,
I don't know, I'm asking, I really don't know.
when a thing is on the consent agenda, I think the public tends not to delve that deeply into the consent agenda.
Okay.
But if it's available to them, I mean, that's 3 more votes.
And that's what we're paid to do, is vote.
I get
So,
that,
I mean,
but unless there's something that we're specifically driving for, I don't understand the need to move it to the regular agenda. When it's something that's reoccurring every month, all these others that have been defined as regular agenda are one-time kind of things. This is something that's gonna be recurring, so I don't know what you gain other than putting more stuff in regular agenda. I mean,
Well, I think it's important. I think it's important. I think it's an important reminder to the public that we have a formal voting role in addressing personnel moves. And I think that's important. Now, I don't know, I mean, you guys can generally, I don't know what the rules are on overruling my request.
We can have the conversation, and we should, but the reality is, the bottom line is, if a board member wants to move it to the regular agenda, it moves. Yes, ma'am.
So then, if that's the case, if I wanna move something else, then I can move. So then, at some point in time, most of these could be moved to the regular agenda if everybody on the board
That's correct.
individually choose to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Items C48 and C49.
So are you going to go ahead and move them now?
I
Can
am.
you trigger? Okay.
We have items C48 and C49. Any questions, concerns? Items, moving to the regular agenda, items R50 through R52. Mr. Bridges, this is a sidewalk easement?
I believe that's correct.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
At Bridge Technical, yes, it
Okay.
is.
And we're,
Rich Community High School.
okay. And then, Mr. Bridges, you have an item you're bringing forward. So as usual, I'll ask you to craft the motion for that, please.
Okay. Well, and that's something I hate, as you know, I hate doing things on the fly. But things have been moving very quickly with respect to our Hurricane Irma claims. That probably ought to just put a Hurricane Irma standing item on the work session agenda until we get it all sorted out. Superintendent graciously allowed me a few minutes to speak. I know we're running late. But as I communicated to you, Mr. Stidham and Ms. Nicholson and I went to Tallahassee to meet with the Florida Division of Emergency Management last Friday a week ago. And we learned many things, not the least of which was that their attitude toward us going out was considerably more favorable, I think, than it was going in. but they helped us to understand what should have happened in these claims and why we're playing catch-up now. And the real crux of the matter is that we should have had estimates to FEMA within 60 days after the president declared an emergency in September of 2017. That did not happen. So we're doing all that now. And on the recommendation of council, last week, superintendent approved a contract, ma'am?
Go ahead.
Okay, approved a professional services contract with a company called Complete Contracting, who are in the business of doing cost estimates on storm damage. It is a technical professional services agreement. They use not only boots on the ground, but also thermal imaging from airborne assets, as well as satellite imagery capturing the square footages and whatnot. Unfortunately, FEMA and the Division of Emergency Management's deadlines don't line up neatly with school board meetings, so I'm here doing this on the fly. Just to let you know where we are, they were coming into town to do a schedule of cost estimates, and at the beginning of last week, we were informed that there had been a determination previous that Lake Wales High School would be ineligible for reimbursement because the dollar amounts that had been expended or needed to be expended did not meet FEMA's threshold, which is $3,100. Not very much. And but the estimates that had been uploaded thus far did not exceed that amount once they took offsets for other costs that had been reimbursed. And so that went to the head of the line, because when that letter came out, a 60-day clock started ticking on us to put in any additional claims that we might have on that school. And our council suggested that there was probably a great deal more than that. So we put Complete Contractors to work first on that. And I will tell you that they have literally worked around the clock, starting last Thursday afternoon. Thus far, they have identified $2.5 million worth of storm damage that they directly attribute to Hurricane Irma. So if we recover that, this will have been a very good investment. Once they finished that, they have done 9 campuses total, including most of the high schools, and right now they have identified $25 million as of yesterday in damage that they attribute directly to Hurricane Irma. They're using thermal imaging to do this. It's not guesswork. A lot of these roofs are built-up roofs where if you go up on a ladder and look at it, all you see is gravel. So you can't see whether there are holes or damage or anything else. They use thermal imaging, and in lay terms, what happens is they put assets in the sky. They've got FAA waivers to fly drones at night, and they put drones in the sky with thermal imaging equipment. And after a certain period of time, during the day, the roofs absorb sunlight. There's thermal mass, and at night, once the sun goes down, after a certain period of time, they do thermal imaging, and the areas water absorbs and radiates heat at a different rate than spaces that are dry. So when they do this, they can identify areas where there's water intrusion that you cannot see. And so they've got 2 crews working from day to dark, and then another crew working from dark to day doing that. We've got I believe we have about 4 days left before we run out of the superintendent's contracting authority. They've indicated to us that they can do the first 80, which are the priorities, for a total of $500,000 plus expenses. And if they want if we want them to do all 170 projects, the total will be about $1.2 million plus expenses. They're flying $50,000 drones over these schools, and they've got crews that he's brought in from all over the place. It is a lot of money. If we don't do it, we're essentially going to be stuck with what we have, which is very, very low estimates. With this, we have a shot at maximizing our FEMA claims. It can also be used on the insurance side as justification. You know, we have some insurance coverage that we hope to recover under, and then whatever's left, we will seek to get from FEMA. Their indication is that spring break is when, and the way they said it was, spring break would be the belly of the beast, because that's when they can get into schools when there are not students present. Right now, they're doing roofs, but they can go inside when the students are not there. They have 24 days to do all the schools. Right now, as I said, he's got 3 crews running. If the additional funding is approved, they will end up with 4 teams on the ground and 2 airborne. So they'll be running 2 airborne at night and 4 during the day. So, you know, like I said, I hate doing this kind of thing on the fly, but this is happening very fast. We do not yet have a proposed contract for this. We have asked for one, and we've been assured that one would be forthcoming this afternoon. My question to you, if you wish to proceed with this, do you wish for me to bring it to you this afternoon so you can simply authorize the superintendent to enter into a follow-on contract? Or would you like to have a special board meeting later this week when I can bring the actual documents to you? And once again, you don't have to do it. But if you don't, we'll be stuck with the estimates that we have. As I mentioned, right now we're $25 million ahead of where we were last Thursday because of the efforts of this company doing our estimates. Yes, sir.
What is the record of them converting their estimates into that? Like, are they? What is the? Have other districts used them repeatedly?
I don't know. I'll be happy to get that. What information is available for you on that? Okay, their reputation is general. My understanding is their reputation is generally in the insurance industry. But I'll be happy to get in.
I mean, so this I guess the follow up to that is the thermal imaging concept is recognized as
right. It's
legitimate.
A standard of the industry. The way I understand that our public adjuster was looking at it was the possibility of doing computer modeling. But at this point, our council have advised us that computer modeling is probably not the appropriate justification when you're submitting FEMA claims. They like to see actual estimates. It's like an insurance claim, and the concern is that using anything less could actually trigger an audit, or worse yet, the possibility of a fraud investigation.
So this is sort of considered the gold standard of
right.
Of
It is. I understand that it is the standard of the industry, and it is what our council has recommended that we do. Yes, ma'am.
And what is staff's opinion?
Well,
Superintendent, I mean, what? I hear where you're coming from a legally standpoint.
I would have to allow staff to
Yeah,
speak for themselves.
that's what I would like to hear.
And I was going to ask Ms. Usher.
Sure. Please.
Ms. Cunningham, my staff, we looked at all the buildings and tried to fix what we can see. But without really getting into the roofs and all that, we don't know what damage is in there. So with this, it's very possible, but I don't know what it will provide as yet. But Mr. Bridges said that they're having success with it. I haven't seen, it all depends on the right equipment and what they're doing when they're doing the thermal imaging. So we could not get really deep unless we pull off all our roofs, and we fixed what we could see to make sure the roofs weren't leaking. But I don't know if there's any additional damage that we can't see from the outside.
One thing that was interesting was they made it out to Scott Lake, where the roof was scheduled to be replaced this Saturday, and they discovered by their estimates $300,000 to $400,000 of damage attributable to Hurricane Irma. If that roof had come off and been replaced, they never would have been able to capture that. So we may have saved between $300,000 and $400,000 just on Scott Lake, because they happened to be in town and in place and discovered that that was happening.
So what's the cost for them again?
What they have indicated, and I spoke this morning on a conference call with our counsel and John Miner, who is the principal of Complete Contracting. And for to get us through our initial deadline, which is April 9th, the first 80, the big claims, $500,000 plus expenses. That includes the amount that the superintendent already approved. If we want them rather to go back and review all the claims and do all the buildings, the total would be $1.2 million for all campuses, and on the others that would supplement. It would be supplemental information that we are able to upload based on what they have done so far. It is reasonable to believe that there would be significant additional monies for which they could support a claim.
And the expenses, have you reviewed that? Are they
No, ma'am.
reasonable on
No,
per
ma'am.
diem or whatever?
It sounds like they are minimal,
Okay.
but the costs that they have given us are based on hourly rates for the engineers and technicians who are doing it. It's not a blank a fixed price. It's based on hourly rates, and it would be not to exceed. Yes, ma'am.
How exactly do they pinpoint the damage to Irma versus like?
Well, what they were able to do,
normal wear and tear?
fortunately, and they tipped their hat to our facilities department. Fortunately, our facilities department took a good deal of photographs. We have photographic evidence of a good deal of it. But some of it is also based on the nature of the damage. They have wind maps showing when the high winds came in, and they're able to extrapolate from that and figure out which damage would require that level of wind.
I guess I'm just insurance company, so.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You're not
But
gonna win.
But we're doing it both sides, and it is for sure that if we don't do it,
Right,
we
I
will
get
not
that
recover
part.
anything.
But you know, as soon as we say that, they say, "Oh, that was dry rotted. That was
Yeah,
that was age.
there will no doubt.
That was already there."
Yeah, there will no doubt be some of that, but it's been very interesting, and I know we didn't have time to have Mr. Miner come do a presentation right now. It might be handy to do that very shortly. I know we don't have another meeting before the deadline, but it's fascinating stuff. They can go out and look at it and determine that it would take a wind of this magnitude for this length of time to cause this kind of damage, then look at the wind maps and be able to ascertain that the only wind that we sustained at that level was attributable to that storm.
Gotcha.
They also go back and do work order surveys and determine what calls have been made, when they were made, what the nature of them was, and they can analyze that. And it's I gather, a fairly precise business, but this is what they do. Mrs. Fields?
I recommend that, we let Ms. Jackie and, the facilities department work on whatever needs to be done, and within, the authorization that we have for her, and move this, because,
If we don't do it, we lose it. Like I said, I'd certainly be happy to, if you'd like to have a special board meeting where we can have presentations on it, and the
within
documents.
the next few days?
Yes, ma'am, we'd have to do it, preferably by Thursday, so that he'll know to bring his crews, for spring break.
Okay, so, Mr. Townsend?
It's fast.
So, well, the question is, do we want to move forward with Mr. Bridges' proposal? And I'd like a board consensus on this.
Mine is yes.
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 I have a question. First, I want to clarify. So, what I think I hear you saying is we've already committed to $500,000.
No,
right?
we had committed to the superintendent's contracting authority of less than, tops out at 250.
Okay, so you're going to expand that.
Right, so we would go from 250 or 249.9 to 500 plus expenses, or my suggestion, I look, based on what they have done, I suspect that they're going to find, they're going to go back and re-examine the estimates that we've already done and find a good deal.
But there's essentially $1 million at stake then for us putting up, so.
Yeah, and once again, if we're successful, some or all this would likely be recouped as administrative costs from FEMA. And of course, if we're not successful, we turn around and we still use it on the insurance side in support of our insurance claim.
You had mentioned there's a distinction between big claims and not as big claims, like if there's, so can we talk for a second about that?
Sure.
So the ones we've already got them looking at, or we think they have a higher return? I mean,
Well, the ones that we're on deadline for, and the ones and the large ones. They started out with the high schools simply because they've got the biggest and the most buildings.
So with large, you mean like physically large?
Right.
Not large like we estimate. You're just talking about the size of the building.
Yes, sir. They've, council has been working with them to prioritize where they go when, and make sure that number one, we don't miss any deadlines. If there are things that have to be done within the next week, or they turn into a pumpkin, we get those done.
We don't have a ranking of like the schools we expect to find damage.
I don't think so.
There's not like a top 15 and then everything.
I think that they're looking at some and thinking that there are schools where it's more obvious than others. But yes, there is between council and the contractor, they have prioritized things to make sure that we don't miss any deadlines, and and certainly they're trying to identify the high value targets first. You know, if you run out of time, you want it to be on the penny ante stuff.
And the experts that we have hired to do this is what they
Right.
This is their recommendation.
This is their business, and this is what our counsel, this is what she does. And she is, and she identified him through industry contacts, and he's, and good news is he's it's a Florida company.
And this gives the superintendent authority to act.
Right.
And so you have consensus to
Thank
move
you.
on that. So I'll ask you for the motion.
I'll do that, and the other thing that I would suggest is that we expand the representation agreement that we have with Ms. Nicholson and Mr. Stidham to include not only items that are directly on appeal, but these that we're talking about here, where they have obligated the projects and started the time clock running. We have 60 days to get our documentation in. It has been amazing how annoying they have been in the middle of the night and on weekends, calling and texting or emailing and moving things around. But my recommendation would be to include, and the reason for that is the projects that have been obligated have a 60-day timeline in the process that looks just like the appellate process. So they can move in and do the same thing on those that they're doing on these.
I mean, we asked this question. I would like to know. I mean,
Sure.
If you've got reservations about this, tell us. Like, I mean,
No.
You don't?
No,
Okay.
I've talked to Wes a great deal.
Yeah.
I mean, he handled a lot of it last week. And I talked to him, and I know he went to Tallahassee, and they were recommended highly
Yeah,
from the appeals committee and the other council.
And it is, and I will tell you, it is nerve-wracking stuff. The stakes are high, and I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that I do this very, very advisedly. I don't like doing things on the fly, and if I could sync their deadlines to the school board's meetings, I would be much happier. But as you know, we talked earlier, we have been without a risk manager for many, many months. The person who has, the staff member who's been doing FEMA stuff has decamped. We are, it's, we're trying to keep people at the switches and awake and alert and go back and recapture things that otherwise would have been lost. So
Well, I mean,
it's nerve-wracking.
if we had everybody in place and there was no timeline, there still wouldn't be any guarantee.
Right.
So we're still, I mean,
Yes, that's right.
It's what's the
Yeah, my question was, will we recoup the money we're putting out, and Russ has said we will recoup that
Yeah,
back
if we,
through that.
yeah,
So-
if we're successful on one of these things, it is likely to cover the costs. But in addition, there's, once again, if we're successful with FEMA, this is the sort of thing that we would submit as an administrative cost.
Well, if we don't pursue this, we won't be successful.
Correct.
Well, anyway.
So,
Correct, that's the bottom line.
okay. So, thank you, Mr. Bridges.
So I'll do both of those things. The contractor and the representation expansion.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll prepare the motions.
Is that what I heard from the board, both items? Okay. All right, so the items of new business, the board protocols was my item that I added, and since we have only about 10 to 12 minutes left, I'm gonna move that to another agenda. I'm gonna pull that and move it on to another agenda at a future date. Mr. Townsend, the other items are yours. We have 12 minutes.
Well, I mean, I think the Lake Wales one, I'm happy to discuss at the future meeting. I mean, I think conceptually, you guys, if you've taken time to read it, you see what I'm trying to do. I think there's a way to accommodate them and us, and
Okay, I just want to make a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you say we can discuss it at a later meeting. I would like to respectfully ask that we table it, and because right now it stresses teachers out right when they're in the peak of getting ready for the assessments and everything. And they're already stressed, and communities are stressed, and I would like for us to table it till we get teachers through their sessions, what they're coming into.
right.
It happens, for the last couple of years, it's happened right at the same time every year, and they get stressed every year. Mary Ann and I went out last year, right around the same time.
Right around the same time.
And they're
every time,
stressed.
They're just ready to,
They are.
they said they're crying. and they just
I respectfully ask that
Well-
we table it.
Well, that's, I mean, the McLaughlin presentation was given last meeting. I mean, that raised the issue, and I think what I'm suggesting doesn't even change that. I mean, you can go forward.
And we did hear, because we wanted to hear from the community and different things, and they're starting those meetings and allowing them to work through, but to start bringing in and laying in different plans right now, it's only stressing them out, is where they are. They were happy. I can tell you that staff has been moving forward, answering their questions on that, the one that was presented, that they came and spoke about, the teachers did. Again, this is not the first time this plan has come about. I actually learned that it actually came out, I think, in 2008, that they've been trying to bring this forward. And so we're just trying to work through, and then we have to hear from the community. So, and that's where they are now, just working through their community. But every time they keep, what we're hearing is, right at testing, we keep throwing into the crux of, what are we doing? Are we in the Lake Wales Charter? Or are we still in a public school setting? And that's what we're trying to calm them down, allow them to work through this and have their community meetings and see the direction they want to go, and then we can come back with that.
Okay.
Ms. Fields? Excuse me just one moment, Mr. Townsend. I think Ms. Fields had a question.
My statement was basically gonna be what Ms. Bird just said. We need to hear from the community and see what the community want, and I just want to know what the status of the meetings are, and she's answered that.
Mr. Townsend?
Well, since we're gonna go discuss this, the other part of this, I would like for there to be a meeting that doesn't have to involve the teachers at all. It doesn't have to, no one has to commit to it. I would like for the DOE's head of choice and our staff and their staff to sit down and talk about a language that would allow for last resort status for any charter school. If you want to exclude Lake Wales from it, that's fine. I would like for us then to come up with model language with DOE, which DOE seems to be okay with, that allows us to impose zoning on a charter school. That is a step forward that we do not even have to adopt. But I would like to see the language created so that we can address it. The plan that was presented, that none of us were really consulted on, it was just brought to us. Creates a permanent a permanent divide and competition out there. The idea that I have suggested, I believe, keeps McLaughlin fully as a district-run school, under the plan that you guys are talking about doing, and imposes some pretty serious geographical restrictions on Lake Wales that Lake Wales folks say they are willing to consider and or to perhaps even adopt. You know, we should know what is possible legally and linguistically before we table things and rule things out. What does table mean in your estimation?
At a later time.
So we can talk about this in the summer then, if you're okay with that.
We're talking in summer, because right now they're getting ready to go into testing, and that's something that's stressing them out. We're still talking to the communities out there about, you know, the direction, because you have to have that conversation before the teachers leave, and the staff started that, which is one of the things that they asked. I have a question. Can you define schools of last resort? Because I saw that in two things. You're calling them last resort.
Through, I think the closest analogy to this, as I understand it, is Jefferson County now, where they only have one school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have that as a, like, the place where you're, you know, you have to send your child to a school or you go to jail, right? That's the, you know, we have compulsory education. One of the great problems we have in Lake Wales and with many of the other charter schools is that they don't have that responsibility. They are not the school of last resort. If a kid doesn't apply to Lake Wales High, then we have to transport that kid to Winter Haven High or to Haines City High or to, it is a major busing cost for us. It is bad, it has this bad trade where you got kids coming in and kids going out. The head of choice for DOE, his name is Adam Miller. I had a long conversation with him. I'm not the most pleasant guy with DOE. I think we can all agree on that. I'm not a DOE lackey. He said, I don't see any reason why you couldn't make Lake Wales High the school of last resort, which means you stay there if you're rather than going to Winter Haven High, and that would affect a lot of our busing. The nice thing about the plan that we've suggested here is it creates a cooperative. It could create a cooperative, very much along the lines. You know, we talked about Kathleen High and CFAA today. We talked about the transportation. There was a time when the transportation was only for CFA. What I'm talking about is essentially Kathleen High and CFAA for Lake Wales. We just run McLaughlin with all the art stuff, and they can run Lake Wales High. Our kids get to choose to go to Lake Wales High. Their kids get to choose to go to McLaughlin. Although, if our kids are in the arts programs at McLaughlin, they automatically roll up and they automatically get a spot. So our McLaughlin kids would roll up first. That's my theory. I mean, that's this would all have to be negotiated and talked through. You know,
So school of last resort is kind of like your zone school?
Correct.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
I am talking about drawing a zone around Lake Wales High.
Got it.
And making the kids in Lake Wales go there. I mean, subject to state law, where, you know, I think in theory you can't make kids who are zoned for George Jenkins go to Jenkins now. But somewhere when you have a compulsory education model where you're required to go to school up until X point, that has to vest somewhere. Right now it vests with us. We have school of last resort status for Lake Wales. We just have it at Winter Haven High, and we have it at Haines City High, which makes no sense. No, I'm not talking about imposing anything on anybody. But taking that step, finding some sample language, having DOE actually live up to what the guy said to me. You know, I'd like to see have a meeting and come up with a template with how that could work, because it could work with some of these other charters as well. If they're going up in the Northeast, then we can, you know, I'm not, again, none of this is, this is conceptual. I'm trying to solve problems that exist. This thing, you know, I love the additional arts programs, but we're setting up a generation of bloodletting out there with this, if there's not some kind of way to operate. This is kind of my last shot at it. I've been thinking about ways to try to fix this for a long time. This is my best idea, and if people don't want to do it, it's fine. But I want it to be known that I tried.
And to be clear, excuse me for interrupting, Mr. Townsend, but to be clear, as I read through this, this shouldn't in any way cause concern for the teachers there, because what we're talking about is they will continue to operate in a district school. It's a cooperative.
As union status. I'm not talking about any of that. We're just cooperative. Sorry.
Yeah, much like Summerlin and Bartow.
Right.
So, you know, I would hope this wouldn't create any concern for them. If somebody read through it, I think they would understand that that's not the intent. We're not talking about turning that to a charter school. We're trying to find a solution, and I personally like the idea, but we'll have to move it to a future agenda.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you have 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. I have a very detailed resolution concerning vouchers. You know, I was dealing with some stuff with my parents and didn't really catch the story when it happened the first time. You know, we have a very serious problem happen at one of these schools, and I think what's important, what I became aware of, and you know, if you've read the Orlando Sentinel's reporting on this, the vast majority of the schools that take voucher kids who take the Step Up for Students scholarships don't have any oversight at all. They're not subject to any of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas rules. They're not subject to anything. They are really a pretty major safety risk, as this demonstrates. Yeah, I think the resolution speaks for itself. I would be willing to bet a significant amount of money that the child who was allegedly abused in that situation is probably back in our district now. I don't know that. I don't know who the child is. But, you know, just as I was just talking about school of last resort, we're the schools of last resort for kids that are hurt by these schools. It really wasn't, something I was paying that much attention to till Ron DeSantis decided to redefine public schools as those schools, which he did. Said they're public schools if they're getting public money. And, you know, I think it's extremely important. I don't consider vouchers a competitive threat in any way. I'm not afraid of these schools. They're subpar, and it's not All Saints and Lakeland Christian that's taking about vouchers. It's these little small schools that, you know, are kind of off the radar. But there are, I think, in many cases, as we've seen in this case, they're a threat to the kids who go there in many cases, and there's nothing. There's no governing body for them. And I think that we should encourage the Stoneman Douglas grand jury to look into, you know, how these schools are overseen, what safety risks they pose. And again, I didn't decide to redefine these schools as public schools, but once they were, I feel like we have some obligation, morally, and you know, that's my spiel. So,
Ms. Miller, you had a question?
Yeah, I had two. Quickly on that piece, there is new legislation. The School of Choice Office has hired liaisons go into schools now if you get scholarships or vouchers, but they're going into a very few, and they're only doing a walkthrough, probably at the beginning of the school. So I have a meeting with School of Choice tomorrow with the DOE, and I have some questions about that, so I'll ask further. But other than that, there is no accountability with the vouchers. It's choice of giving the parents the entire decision as far as where they're going and for them to look out for their own I heard about tabling what they were working on. And what I hear from the community and a little confusion that we had, and we just need to be aware of that for next time, as that last work session ended, there was press releases gone out quickly about this new proposal when the board itself had one vote vehemently of no and everyone else asking for more information and not providing consent to move forward. And I think when the public reads that, when it's available to them that quickly, it was in a breaking news format, they're reading it as it's going to happen. And that might have caused confusion, and I think we just need to be very cautious in things that have not been voted on, have not been decided to keep them going in the community and having those meetings. But if you'd have read that press release and not watched the work session yourself, you could have came away with that was already decided what we were going to do. So I would just caution us doing that. It just doesn't read well in the community. Some people think that's already been decided, and it hasn't. That's the only thing. So for tabling, I think that's a good idea. We just need to avoid that in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms. Reynolds?
There is actually, as we speak, SB 1444 in the Senate is being heard in pre-K 12 quality subcommittee at 4 o'clock, and that is exactly what you're talking about with them being able to have the oversight. Basically, anytime they get any type of complaint, if there are public dollars being spent in a private school, charter school, public school, they can go in and the DOE can do an investigation immediately. And there is a companion bill, HB 1127, that is, as we speak, being heard in pre-K 12 quality subcommittee at 3:30. And both of those have had pretty favorable reviews.
Is it subjecting them to all the same safety requirements that public schools have?
The bill that our rule change has already happened. They've only hired like 12, I think, people. They said we may get to 200 private schools. I can tell you there's over 70 in Polk County alone. So we need to be very cautious as a state and as a taxpaying and as a constituent that they are beginning to do some oversight, but we are still way behind what we'll be able to reach. There's no way those few people will get to all private schools unless the new legislation brings money to hire at the DOE. So it's a process, but I think we need to be very, concerned about what's going on in the 72 private schools in Polk County.
Yeah,
And this specifically is if they receive a complaint that they will immediately have so much time to act and to go into those schools and do a review.
Right.
Well, I mean,
We'll
it's
still
new
be able to get it
legislation.
to them in session.
Okay. I mean, specifically what's in my resolution is the creation of something like the Office of Early Childhood Learning, which is much more extensive than anything they're talking about.
Session end.
When does session end? May 3rd?
So we won't.
May 6th.
Oh,
We'll be
yeah,
back
so
in
we will.
April.
We'll be able to get it. We'll still be able to get it in
All right.
session.
I have a
Yes, ma'am.
question.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Fields?
I don't know if anybody can answer. Does Kingdom Prep get state monies?
They,
Anybody know that?
yes,
Yeah.
They do
they
get
were
state
getting
money.
scholarships.
Jason,
They do get state dollars through the voucher program. They also get federal title dollars. It's actually, we're the LEA for that. They get their proportionate share of some title dollars.
Okay, thank you. And then other things, I think we just need to be very mindful how we single out schools. Lakeland Christian School, they do have a governing board, and they also have an SRO. So they are working towards being in compliance. And I think their name was kind of thrown out there a few minutes ago. So I just think we need to be very cautious of that.
Can I clarify that? I specifically cited Lakeland Christian and All Saints as examples of what these schools are not.
I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, no, I just want to make it
Thank
clear.
you. Thank you for clarifying.
I agree. My quarrel is not with Lakeland Christian
Thank you for clarifying.
or All Saints.
And I just want to make one thing abundantly clear. I didn't see anything in Mr. Townsend's resolution suggesting that we investigate our state legislators. That was kind of a rumor floating around, and I want to clear that up. This resolution, whether it comes to pass or not, doesn't suggest that we want our state legislators investigated, so I want to clarify that.
Where is the resolution?
can I add?
Yeah, where is it? I haven't seen it.
I said it was attached, should
Yeah,
have
it
been
was
attached to
Yeah, it
the
is.
agenda.
Could you make sure everybody gets a copy of it, please?
Yes, please.
Ms. Warrington?
Can I just add one thing for the public? I want the public to know that the school that's in their Kingdom Prep is not governed by this board and the
Correct.
superintendent.
Correct.
Because I think people are thinking it is. I said it's not part of us at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not in our lane.
But it's just been, the most powerful guy in the state just said it's a public school.
Right, but
I mean,
I just
yeah.
want the public to know that it's
Right,
not
I get
governed
you.
by.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, to our legislators' credit, these companion bills were both filed in response to what happened at Kingdom Prep, because they saw a need to fix it. So I think it's important that we recognize that there is
Talking loud has some effects.
there is something.
How would you know that? I'm just curious.
She's
She's following
read
that.
those.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I don't see it anywhere else.
Okay, we have a discipline committee meeting. We probably are not gonna get the computers in there that quickly, so if y'all have
got it
reviewed
memorized.
those, if you have them memorized, that would be helpful.